Good evening, everybody. Hey, welcome here. We are a few minutes late, but hey, good things come to those who wait. Like I told my boss once, many, many years ago, who called a meeting at 7:30 in the morning, but told nobody that, even though we got to work at 8. So, hey, you know, only a few minutes, but hey, what you're going to be in store for tonight is a real treat. This is something that is probably 40 years in the making. No, probably 40, let's see, 75. Oh my God, almost 50 years in the making, folks. Oh my God, can you believe I'm that old? Wow. We're going to have a fun time with this tonight. I am, well, I'm there's so many stories that come off of this television show that we can go into, and we will get to them. But without further ado, I got to bring in the star of the night, the star of the hour, the rock star of all rock stars in terms of knowing things about Trilogy of Terror and who loves the wonderful Zuni doll. It is the great Hungry Boy, or tonight he's hungry for better sci-fi scripts. How are you, my friend?
I am just pleased and honored to be here and to show tribute to this magnificent movie, which has been dreadfully underrated no matter how much it is loved.
Yes, it really is. I will say there are better parts than others, uh,
Yes,
but that happens in a lot of things. But when it really hits a home run out of the park.
100%. And some people can look at Act Two and they can say, all right, this is when we can get up and make a sandwich.
Hmm.
But, you, you know,
Yeah.
the, the thing is that when you rewatch it again when you're middle aged, and you've been through a couple of dating crises, if you know what I mean, number two becomes a lot more scary as a grown man than when
Oh
you're.
my gosh. Hey, number one was scary for dating, as far as I saw. Probably
Oh,
worse.
oh
Oh
yes,
my
and
gosh.
there's gonna be there's so much to talk about today. I hope I have the strength. I hope I have the strength. I got my hands clasped together, praying for the strength to get through
Well,
this.
we will do it. And if we need to take an intermission, you need to get up and walk for a couple minutes. I can diatribe for a little bit. So, hey, you make yourself comfortable. I have all the time in the world you have, which I think you said is what, up to 15 pages of notes?
We got past that. We got
Wow.
past.
Dude, I tell you what, if everybody had guests like you, man, I'm surprised you're not booked more often.
Well, a
Oh,
lot of them are observations, but a lot of them are actually kind of when I did a deep dive into Trilogy of Terror a couple of years ago, I
mhm.
redid that for this show, and I started looking into things that there'll be a certain aspect of Trilogy of Terror that will be of particular interest to Maddie's daddy, otherwise known as Thor, otherwise known as Steve, who's one of my favorite guys, and I'm really glad that he's going to be listening in tonight, and I hope I do justice to his expectations because his expectations for me are always too high.
Oh, it's always the pressure when other people build up the expectations for you, and
Yeah.
it's like one of my former coworkers. I had him being he was an Air Force pilot, and I had him being all shot up, his plane damaged, and all this other stuff. And
Ooh.
he's like, I didn't say that. That never happened. I'm like, what? I thought you said that. No. So anyway, then I had a Navy pilot that we took to Disney one time, and it was dark, but he could not stop. I had to pull the van over and cover up a flashing red light on a seatbelt thing that wouldn't stop because he said, as a pilot, a red light is bad. A flashing red light is even worse. So
Yeah.
exactly. So, well, let's go ahead and say hi to we got 5 people watching us. We are both on Twitch and YouTube tonight. Make sure you follow us over on the YouTube side, the Twitter side, the Twitch side, that side, the Twitch side. Follow us over there. Make sure you hit that like button on this YouTube side. But folks, get your friends 17 away. We have moved up to 283 subs on the channel today. And
Hmm.
it's just thrilling and amazing what's happening. And it's only because of great people like you in the chat that come in to spend the time with us. And then great guests like Hungry Boy. that we're
Well,
going to have
speaking
tonight.
of great guests, at some point, I'm hearing a beeping. It was just my luck, like Karen Black's luck with all her characters, particularly in the Zuni episode. I'm hearing a beep. If it's a smoke alarm, I might have to move into the other room because I don't want to have people being annoyed by the beeping. So if I hear the
I didn't
beeping,
hear it though.
oh, you didn't hear it?
No,
Okay.
I didn't hear
But
it.
if you do hear it, let me know, and then I'll move into the other room. Okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We will do that. So let's go ahead and say hi to Maddie's daddy, who's going to be listening in today, who was the first in the comments. So, he's excited when he's here that early.
Yes.
But I'm going to make Steve a sports fan before it's all over because he's starting to lurk more in some of the sports shows. So, but I always say, and I keep telling Raquel and all them that you can make sports geeky, but look at Mark with his spreadsheets. I nerddom rules with statistics and sports things. I'm watching College World Series right now with the Florida Gators. There's stats that I never heard of before. They keep coming up with all of it now. So, but hey, that's I'm going to fight the battle for sports on YouTube. So you know how that goes. So. But hey, let's say, speaking of sports, Buddy Hepburn, who just graduated from high school, he's like a baseball pitcher, actually. He's waving at us. Good to see you. And this is the lady behind all of it that keeps everything going. She has single-handedly kept 2 streams of mine going.
Yay, Mrs. Deadman.
Yes. Well, hey, one night, Culture Casino, Ash, and Clobby were all on talking sports. My computer froze up, locked up, and everything. So they're continuing talking for 10, 15 minutes. She got me on her computer, got set up. Then one time I did a game stream with somebody. It crashed for like half an hour. Not only did she download the game to her computer, got me on StreamYards, the whole chat, like 10 people stayed with me for half an hour doing nothing, just laughing about it. So, sometimes she says I embarrass her, but I can't afford her an Amazon bucks either. So
that's like because you and I are close in age. I'm a bit older. Steve, Thor's a tiny bit older than me, but that goes back to like the great moments in live radio that I really miss. And that's why I really love YouTube, because these are like the good radio interview shows that we used to have, but no longer.
Oh, wow. These things are just kind of taking an organic growth of it. I started with just like regular chill shows by myself or reading news stories, then have a friend come on here or there. And then now with everybody that's out there. And I will say, like I said, not only great people in the chat, subs, people come in and talk, but I mean, I've had great support from collaborators and other people that want to come on. And it's been very moving and, really humbling that people want to come on and talk, especially with your passion with this one tonight. So,
I mean, I was, I had been a horror fan since I was 4 years old, which was a couple of years before, or more than a couple of years before this came out. And anything that had to do with a creature or a monster, I was all about that. Okay, so that's why.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, like I was addicted to, and Steve loves this show as well as does Clobby, the 1960s Outer Limits, and you would have some small monsters. Sometimes you'd have bigger monsters. But if it was a scary show, because horror is very linked to science fiction in the way that it asks you to expand your imagination and try to figure out the plot, try to figure out the mystery. So although I like science fiction best, horror stuff, particularly stuff like Trilogy of Terror, is a very close by a nose second. You know, what they call in horse racing a photo finish.
Right. Yeah.
And so, Phantom of the Opera, the Universal Frankenstein movies, Dracula to a lesser extent, Wolfman certainly, just like Mark C with a D, the Gill Man, Creature from the Black Lagoon, big character for me, and all the Japanese giant monsters, all of that. So, when you suddenly see the little bugger that we're going to see later on,
oh yeah.
He is just one of the all-time classic movie monsters, even though it's a made-for-TV movie. Doesn't matter. He is actually up there with Freddy Krueger, as far as I'm concerned.
And folks, stay around for that because I have got some stories with that one. And let me say hello to Zax. Hey, Zax.
Hello, Zax.
Way back at you. Hey, glad you're here tonight. And the missus is saying live television was awesome.
Yes, it was, madame. Yes, it was.
Yes, I don't remember. I remember in the '70s growing up that they had the filmed in front of a live television audience, but
Yes.
I don't remember. Is that yeah? But not like real live TV. But yeah, you got a natural laugh track. Nowadays it's all artificial laugh tracks and stuff like that. But
Oh,
can
I
definitely tell.
hate the laugh tracks. But you also had live debates on television.
Hmm.
You had people like Gore Vidal going up
Hmm.
against William F. Buckley
Yep.
when there was the first big cultural war in the United States in the late '60s, early '70s, and people were riveted to that. And I like the spontaneity. I like the rhythm of the moment.
Hmm.
And that's something that I'll be bringing up later on in the overview that I think Steve would also appreciate is that one of the things that Karen Black brought to this, and this is a little overview leading in before we go into Act One, is that she was also a very good stage actress, which a lot of people don't know. And she was allowed by Dan Curtis to really embrace that in terms of body language and facial expression.
Hmm.
And I think that's what really sets this television movie apart from so many others.
Yes. Well, we'll start to go into that. Um, One question I did want to ask you a little bit about one about your background, but then two, you're hungry for better sci-fi scripts. You're a hungry boy. You're on Twitter. You're hungry for Patrick Troughton, Doctor Who. What can you explain a little bit about your background? How you get all these different hungry names?
Okay, so the whole thing about the manifold variations of the Hungry name is a joke, because originally, when I wanted to sign on for YouTube, I was a fan of, because I didn't get to eat much as a kid or a teenager, frozen dinners, and I found out that
Hmm.
the most popular frozen dinner in America was Hungry Man Dinners, which also was very big in the '70s. At the time, Trilogy of Terror was being made and then shown. And I
Hmm.
tried to get the name Hungry Man on YouTube, and they said, sorry, all variations have been taken. So I thought,
Right.
oh, well, screw that. What about Hungry Boy? Because I thought I used to have some friends from the South, Georgia, Texas, etc. And they would say, oh, he's a hungry boy. Oh, look at him eat. He's a hungry boy. And that's no problem. So I thought I can roll with Hungry Boy. And then I first came on to Clobby's 735er Club for the Star Trek stuff, and I was getting some compliments from Raquel, and she implied, "Oh, aren't these wonderful intellectual comments from such a bright young man?" And I thought, "Oh my God, people think I'm a teenager with the name Hungry Boy. Screw this! I'm changing this instantly." So I
Yeah.
changed. So I changed it to Hungry for this, Hungry for that,
Yeah.
and I started switching it up every week as an in joke for what the Clobby show was for.
Yeah.
If it was, I changed it specifically for a comic he was reviewing or a certain episode of Star Trek they were reviewing. And I thought if I had, and then I didn't want to go on Tweety, but Clobby said this is the best way to contact me if you need to
Yeah.
contact me. So I set up a Tweety account,
Yep.
and I thought, what am I going to call myself? Oh, screw that! I'm going to go with Hungry again. And Patrick Troughton is the second Doctor Who in history, and he's my favorite Doctor Who. I like those episodes best. So it
Okay.
became Hungry for Patrick Troughton Doctor Who episodes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good
And
to know.
I'm always hungry for better sci-fi scripts, because let's face it, most of them suck right now.
Yep. That is a very common opinion that is going around. And actually, when you see what's coming out is very lackluster compared to the old Outer Limits, Twilight Zone,
Yes.
those type of shows that have been around. And those shows have stand the test of time. They're not outdated. Some of these
No.
newer shows get so specific for a time period that 20 years
Oh,
they'll be irrelevant.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, we are now well past 50 years, a half of a century of enjoying the original Star Trek and the animated series. All right. And people thought that was going to be forgotten. I would say that Discovery is going to be forgotten in 10 years, but people are still going to be watching TOS and the animated series.
Hmm.
And
Was
luckily, a lot of times people stick stuff up on archive.org, and that's how you
hmm
can find a lot of uncut material because people are censoring things now.
right.
And for are you a fan of Clint Eastwood?
Meh, I'm meh on it. It depends on the role.
Okay, depends on the role. Well, I really liked his came out the same year as this almost. 1975, the Iger sanction, and
Okay,
I
I have not heard of that one.
oh, I'm going to have to share that one with you. That is
Okay.
that is a politically incorrect Clint Eastwood playing an ex-spy dragged back into the spy game situation. These
Ah,
this character is easily as politically incorrect as Dirty Harry. Easily.
ah, that's interesting.
Mm.
That is interesting. All right. Well, let's get into the meat of what's going on with this because we have so much in store. But I'm going to bring up this first image here. The
Oh, and also Mrs. Dadman says, this is a
yeah,
great comment.
yeah,
Outer Limits and Twilight Zone terrified me as a kid, laughing out loud. You're not alone, my dear. You're not alone.
exactly. So, and feel free to put some of the shows that scared you guys as a kid or when you grew up and things like that. You know, some of the good
Mm.
TV shows and some of those scared you because, like I said, we got some stories coming up. So basically, here we go. We got the Trilogy of Terror, which obviously trilogy means there's three. There's three parts in this the show that we have, and all featuring the actress Karen Black, who apparently is. I did not realize she had become such a big icon
Yes.
or symbol for because of this movie, because of this or other movies. So it was very interesting to see. Everybody's talking about her, and the missus said for a long time I was afraid to fly on a plane because it's a Twilight Zone episode.
Yes. Nice one, Mrs. Dadman. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Oh, I love that episode. That was also the best done episode in the 1982 Twilight Zone movie where they remade
mm-hmm.
that episode with John Lithgow, but I prefer Shatner.
Shatner. Yeah, yeah. I
But
have not seen that though, but
oh,
she has.
you'd really enjoy it. So she should share that with you. But also going back to what you said to back up your point with Karen Black, she was actually fairly big at this point. So that was one of the reasons why the studios liked the idea of putting her in this piece with just Karen Black because she had actually been in certain iconic films. She had a small part in Easy Rider,
Mm-hmm.
and I think if I recall correctly, she was also in. Well, no, I know this. She was in a film, another horror film called The Asphyx, like asphyxiation. She's actually done a fair amount of horror in her time before and after this. So she was never shy of taking on a genre part, which a lot of actresses would do. But it's the old attitude of I can't do a horror film; it's going to ruin my career.
Right.
And she did not know. If she was going to get what she needed as an actress to be creative, she was going to do the role.
Yeah.
And
She.
boy, she
Yeah.
pulled
I
out
think.
all the stops here. All
And
the
she
stops.
played so many different roles in this one, and she really, really did a good job here with this. So, which brings us to the first episode that was because the three episodes. The first one was Julie. All
Yes.
right, and Julie was. I'm gonna bring up the opening frame on that. The words Trilogy of Terror here. So, okay, ta-da! This in Julie, we start with the opening scene right here. To now, these are college guys. They're college guys, right? Yeah, they're college, but damn,
I'd say community college.
yeah, they look older though than.
Much.
But it's so funny though. You look at a lot of the actors. Everybody looked old in the '70s. Maybe it's because I was a kid then, but it was like all these guys. These guys look like they're in their 40s. And they're college. It just. I don't know. I that's just what hit me. But so all right. So this is the first episode with Julie, and I'm going to mention a little bit about Julie here with that. Uh, a little bit of basically, you got these two guys that we open up with that are college students, and they're checking out all the ladies walking by till they see a young literature teacher. And so the one, Chad, who's Robert Burton, uh,
Chad.
is like, oh man, he's like wants to get in there and all that. So you know, basically puts the moves on, gets her to go out. Hungry Boy, I know you had some notes here. How do you want to approach this first episode?
Well, I kind of, if you don't mind, kind of want to go a little bit scene by scene
Let's do
to
that then.
so
Let's do that.
in the first scene that you're showing, the opening scene,
Hmm.
there's some wonderful foreshadowing here, and foreshadowing has been totally lost in terms of Hollywood. Everything has to be telegraphed, everything has to be in your face immediately. But the foreshadowing is when you're looking at Chad and his goober pal, and they're commenting about the women, they actually say, "Oh," one of them says, "Oh, what a bunch of dogs." I mean, screw him, right?
Hmm.
And you actually twice in this scene, you see a group of four women together, walking first together, and then you see them talking a few seconds later, and they're in the background of the scene. And that is visual foreshadowing and subtext because Karen Black has four characters. So that was a subtle trick by Dan Curtis.
Oh
And
wow.
Dan Curtis, and we'll talk about him in the overview later. He did far more than this in terms of horror. He did some of the best made for television horror you ever saw. And especially for Steve, Maddie's daddy, Dan Curtis was the man behind Dark Shadows. That's where he got his big claim to fame. So, we see this subliminal storytelling with these four women. And then when we get into the next scene in the classroom, we're looking at Karen Black putting a pyramid, a triangle, on the chalkboard, right? And
Hmm.
I love that because when I think you were just old enough that this was still the case with you, but when I was a kid and Maddie's daddy was a kid, they used to show a pyramid, and that would be used to show in divisions predators, like the top predator, the lower predators, basically the food chain going
Right.
down. And as we're going to find out later in this episode, sorry for spoilers, I'm hoping everyone's seen the film.
Yeah, we're going to spoil
Julie,
away. You got it. You can't. Yeah, yeah, it's been around 50 years. Yeah, you can spoil away.
as we learned, Julie is the top of the food chain.
Yes, yes, we do. Yes.
she, she's the T-Rex, baby. She ain't the Brontosaurus. She's the T-Rex.
Well, I'm not to jump because I mean it was not to jump too far to the end, but it was like very much hit me at the end of such a significant role reversal
Yes, and that was
because they introduced her as this plain, homely, very quiet, shy. I mean, you didn't see what she was really like. I mean, every scene she was quiet, meek, and humble. And then all of a sudden at the end with the big reveal, you know, oops, like you said, top of the food chain.
Oh, and I've got notes for that. I got lots of notes for that. But when we get past the triangle scene, the whole thing is he's looking. We see Chad being presented as a predator, sizing her up.
Uh huh.
But then as she's teaching the class in that first scene,
Hmm.
she's showing that knee and that thigh. She sits down on the desk, and you see
Hmm.
that leg shot,
Oh yeah.
and it seems to be accidental, but later on we know it's not accidental, and that's
Right.
just luring him in, you know,
Yeah. He seemed like he got really obsessed. You know, you
very
could see
quickly.
the fixation built quickly and intensely, and was really, really. I mean, you could have had a top 10 model walking by him, and he was so obsessed with her, with that, with with Julie alone. So he wouldn't have seen anybody else. He was so fixated with her.
He was looking at her the way people 15 years ago would have looked at Scarlett Johansson walking down the street in a Black Widow outfit.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, yeah.
And then she's also there's so much. The stories are all done by Matheson, so all of these stories are written by Matheson.
Mm-hmm.
The first two scripts are then translated into screenplay format by Mr. Nolan, who is the other credited writer on the show. But they're very accurate to Matheson's script. And then when she's in the classroom and she's using that pyramid and she's talking about ethics and morals, the
Mm-hmm.
thing is that, again, there's this implication with the pyramid that also implies the Egyptians. Now, their idea of ethics and morals were very different to ours, right? So there's this subtle implication that whatever we think is going to be ethical here, whatever we think is going to be moral here, is probably going to go awry. It's probably going to go wrong. And there's all this subtle stuff you pick up as an adult that you don't know as a kid. But even as a kid, you're there, you're going with the flow, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny though. I didn't remember this episode from my childhood, but it was interesting as an adult watching it just recently, and to see you could see the how they did it. I really I, I liked the way they did it. It was kind of one of those. I was kept waiting for her to do something. You know, you
Yeah.
kind of felt sorry for her
Yes.
being taken
Over and
advantage
over.
of.
Oh, over and over again. I mean,
Yeah.
he's being a total. I don't know if I can use this word. I think YouTube will accept it. He's being a total wanker here
Hmm.
already. He's already set up. We're wasting no time,
Yeah.
and he's already making her uncomfortable. But dude, when we get to the drive-in scene, oh
Hmm.
no, oh no.
Oh yeah. Yep. Taking full advantage of that. So all right. So which the next scene we move from that? We had the intro. You want to hit the drive-in scene next?
Yeah, or whatever you like. We can go slower if you like.
No, that's okay. Let's follow your agenda. You got a good agenda with it. Let's hit what you had to say, and I can address from what you've got.
Well, because at this point, he's already pressuring her for a date, and she's
Hmm.
acting very demure. And oh no, and there's this implication of I'm an old spinster. Why would someone like you be coming on to me? But there's also the statements of this is totally inappropriate, and he's really like he's almost socially pressuring her to the point where she can't say no to a first date.
Right, right,
And these days, go ahead.
and it's like the more she says no, it drives him crazier. To the obsession intensifies.
Every time, every
Yeah,
scene that builds up, well, the mini scenes within the scenes and within this chapter.
and I think it was
And
well acted though too, because he did a good job. I mean, that intensity kept coming through in his acting and his facial expressions, and the command, "I'm in charge." You know, really, you could see a lot of the emotion coming through. You know, his face, like I'm in charge, and yeah, I'm going to have this no matter what you say. Like when he showed the pictures and stuff like that, you know, he was in charge. You know, and
he
it.
he was trying to take control of the situation. And also back in the 70s on American television, you couldn't use the clinical term sexual sociopath, but this guy is a sexual sociopath, and it's
Mhm,
quite clear. This
yeah.
this guy this guy is the chapter in some PhD psychologist's notebook, you know,
Hmm.
and he's the kind of guy where he's lucky he never ran into any of our clobbering friends in a dark alley at a dark night if we ever found out what he was doing, because then it would have been all over. But the other great thing about it is his body language as an actor. He's showing this artificial confidence of the sociopath. But what we're seeing each time is every time these interactions with Julie conclude, we see we see this strange little expression on her face that goes from being pushed around to she's sizing him up, she's analyzing him,
Hmm.
and that could be the teacher or it could be something more sinister. Well, we know it ends up being something more sinister at the end.
Hmm.
Is that okay with you?
Exactly. Yeah, it's fine with me. That's spot on. You know, and those things that you sit there, you watch, and you know, but I think that with the brilliance with it between the acting and the directing and actually the writing was the fact that I still was kind of surprised in the end that she was that assertive. You know, they
Yeah.
did such a good job selling the head fake that she was helpless and weak and everything else. You know, they did such a good job with that even though I should have seen this coming, I didn't see this coming.
The first time I was suspicious by the time we got to the last third of it. The first two-thirds of it, I was not suspicious. I was just worried for her, concerned for her.
Hmm.
But by the time we got to the last third, I was thinking, when I saw it the second time when I was 20 years old, uh, I thought, oh no, I think I see what's going on here. But the beauty of it was that there are foreshadowing hints. Dan Curtis and Karen Black are really respecting the audience's brain back when you
Hmm.
were expected in television and film to respect the audience's brain versus telegraphing everything, as I said, where there's that moment where she's back from school, she's already been pressured by the guy. Chad has snuck out and is basically being a peeper at her, looking at her through the window, and she actually takes off her robe, so we know she's nude from the top up, and she's brushed out her hair, which is
Hmm.
normally in this school marm bun, but now it's long, and it's not only sexy, but it's wild. Like the tips of the hair are wild and
Hmm.
unkempt. She looks like a bit of a wild woman, and that's a hint for later. And as we see at the very end, her body language and her facial expression and vocal tone and the way she's done her hair is completely different at the end, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Okay. So let's move forward. What's the next scene that you want to talk about?
Oh, the drive-in segment.
Drive-in segment. Yes, yes. So which is interesting. She finally gives in to him, goes out on the date. Now, of course, folks, this is 1970s. So, what did you do in the 1970s? You didn't go to a movie theater. You went to a drive-in. Pictures outside on the big screen. And what I liked about it, they had the metal radio box. You remember when you pulled up into them,
Oh
and you
yeah.
pull? It wasn't radio like nowadays. It was that wired in speaker that you put on your window to
Mm.
hold it up. To listen to the volume. So, you know, miss those good old days.
I miss them too, and I remember those. We had those in Australia. The technology was the same around the world. But the,
Hmm.
the thing is, they were so bloody heavy that if you were a kid at the drive-in, the adult had to put it on the window.
Yeah.
And you had to have the window down, so you got all the noise from the outside coming in and competing with the noise from
Bugs.
the speaker. Oh, and the bugs. Yeah, you get
Yeah.
bugs in your ear. And you had to actually put one ear up against the speaker to understand any of the dialogue at all.
Yeah. But
It
we
was
still
hilarious.
did it. I know we still did it though. Although I did think the concession stand looked like what I remember an old movie theater, I mean, drive-in theater concession stand with looked like. Why I don't know, but hey,
I
that's
love
my
those
favorite place.
concession stands. I love those concession stands. The food was terrible. It was the stuff your mother would not allow you to eat. So if you went to a drive-in, you got to eat like the junkiest of the junk food at the
Yep,
drive-in. It was great.
absolutely.
I mean, hot
So
dogs that have been turning
yeah,
there for like 6 months.
all in that foil wrap. It's like and who knows how long the popcorn had been popped. So
And the barbecue burgers. Oh my God. That was like, that made Arby's look good. That was,
oh my gosh, oh, must not be an Arby's fan, but hey, oh gosh, but
Arby's was great until the 1990s. All
oh
right.
really?
So that's fine. But
Uh-huh.
the whole drive-in thing also, it allowed them to use that really beautiful, harsh film noir lighting on Karen Black's face and take advantage of her cheekbones, and also take advantage of how good the guy playing Chad was. Probably a really nice guy in real life, but he was the most rambunctious dickweed in this movie.
Yeah.
And so he looked really sinister when he comes back and gives her the drink, and we actually saw him doing, shall I say, the Bill Cosby moment with the
Yeah.
drink.
Yeah.
And I people think people, Mrs. Statman, you busted me up. I'm sorry. Yes, yes.
Yes. Grease. Dude, I tell you, she's got a wicked sense of humor out there.
I got tears in my eyes now.
Oh,
That's
there
so.
you go.
Oh God, that's great. Um,
Uh,
but the thing is, we can. we can tell actually if you go back and review the film after you saw it the first time and you look at Karen Black as she's accepting the drink and sipping it, she knows what's going on. She knows. So
Right.
there's your viewing experience when you watch it cold, and then there's your viewing experience when you're watching it the second time and catching everything. And
You
she is
know,
just fantastic in this.
yeah, but the guy that played Chad here was her husband.
That's a fact I did not know. That makes it even creepier, but more delicious.
Mrs. just told me that earlier today. I've looked and verified it, and Mark had mentioned it earlier today in his stream that yeah, she was married to him. Probably, I think they might have been divorced when this actually came out, but she was married to, I guess, Burton. See what his name is again. Yeah, yeah, Robert Burton from 73 to 74. So, and
Oh,
this
that's
movie
a
came out in
Hollywood marriage.
75.
That's a Hollywood marriage.
Yeah, quick in and out. Thank you, drive through. Hey, you know. Oh my gosh, Mrs. Why you need to post that a little bit later in the third episode, okay? There you go. Hello, Barry Place 28. Good to see you.
That's great.
Well, Mark's always saying lock your oven, so hey, but
Oh, that's so funny. Oh boy.
oh my gosh,
Oh man.
we're
I'm
still
gonna go ahead.
we're still early in this first trilogy, first episode of the trilogy, and we haven't even made it out of the drive-through yet. We got stuck on food, grease, and germs, and ovens now. But yeah, it was you really felt for, and of course what happened is all inferred because back it's amazing how they could infer a lot of stuff back then without showing it like they do nowadays.
Oh yeah.
And I think that things were less creepy then, and I think it was effective because you don't need to see a lot of that stuff, but you got the point, and they were good, effective in communicating what happened, and stuff like that. Um, but without having to show a lot of stuff and shock value like you see a lot now, because
Yeah.
yeah, you feel bad for her. She got drugged, but then again, you know, and then we see his actions from that scene forward ramp up even more intensity, right?
Yes, and you see her, sorry for the spoilers, faking being the weak little female in the face of his aggression, his social and sexual aggression. We see that ramped up too, because she knows that she's got to actually keep his interest for her to keep her interest, because that's the game being played.
Right,
And that's
right.
a very scary thing. And maybe that was going on in the 70s. Who knows? But, luckily, us as 70s kids or early 80s kids, we
Yeah.
were blithely and beautifully ignorant of this crap going on.
Oh yes, I was
But
like, yeah,
but I feel looking at it again that the writing and the directing was designed for people who understood this stuff, but it had to be spoken in a very quiet, symbolic way.
right. Yeah, because you had to get everything past the censors back then too, and things like that. It
Absolutely.
was a lot tougher at that time. But I go back like we talked a little bit, and I'm trying to not get off the too many bandwagon different rabbit trails because looking at time and things. But is that you know they it's like they used to leave a lot to the imagination. You could fill in the blanks. Nowadays, it's like over graphic. Too many graphics, too much CGI, too much. It's like every scene has to be shown, not just and implied. You get the message, you get the picture of what they're presenting.
Well, absolutely. It's like you look at one of the best, and I recommend this to Mrs. Dadman. There's no gore, there's no nudity. I think there's almost no swear words from 1963, a black and white film called The Haunting,
Hmm.
and a lot of the things that are most terrifying in that film, which is about a haunting,
Hmm.
i- are audio. It's audio and the camera tracking where the sounds are coming from. You don't see the ghost. You don't see any blood. You don't see like a headless torso or anything, but
Hmm.
you're more scared than when they make the bloody remake by Jan Bloody DeBont, which was one of, oh boy, don't get me started on that one.
Yeah.
I hate that as much as a bunch of Star Wars films hate The Last Jedi. All right. That's how
Hmm.
much I hate the remake of The Haunting. But you could go with subtlety, and the subtlety, if the creator of the work trusted the intellect of the audience, it could be more terrifying and more emotionally invested than anything that was just splat on the page. Like, here it
Hmm.
is,
Yep.
you know? And I can't stand it when somebody just, instead of titillating our mind, goes ahead and just like throws a decapitated head at us in a
Hmm.
horror film. That's not horror. That's like circus act.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this film was subtlety from beginning to end, from beginning to end. And there's a lot of things that you need to sort of catch. In Julie, somewhat, but there's a lot of subtlety and what's called subtext in
Hmm.
the second chapter with Millicent and Therese. But let's keep going through this one because, as you
Yep.
say, we're running on time,
I
running on time.
know. And we still got the overview. We're going into details now. We got tons of stories for that last one. Okay, so we got that. We had the drive in. We have more progression. Then we get towards the end. We see the final. The scene. It seemed like all the others where, she's sitting there with her drink. He's sitting there. Get me whatever. And then she's like, and then she's just real quiet. And it's like, no, what?
Yeah,
It was like all of a sudden, what? We went from compliance, all this to just, and it wasn't loud. It was just like, no,
it wasn't even defiance. It was
yeah,
just the real predator telling the pseudo predator what the game is. No,
yeah,
no.
no.
And you notice the complete change in body language and costume and hair? She's wearing like this black robe. It's almost like it's a hint that somebody's going to die, and her hair is just flowing down her head to her shoulders to her
Mm-hmm.
chest, and she's looking at him. Her body language is controlled, it's measured, and as I put it in my notes, she's no longer moving like a timid mouse. She's moving like a panther who is tired of playing with the prey, like a cat that's tired with playing with the mouse and now it's time to eat.
Right. It, like you said, is very, very apparent how that scene changed like that. And like I said though, but it wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't really. It just happened. You know.
And it
You
sets
know.
us up to say what's going on as an
Yeah.
audience. We're sitting there going, wait a second, what's happening? What's changed? And then when he starts looking a little, as a credit to the actor who played Chad, he starts changing his body language a bit before she reveals what's going on. That was excellent timing and excellent construction of the
Hmm.
scene. He's actually starting to get into physical distress before the explanation happens. And then the physical distress happens. We, as the audience, say, what's going on? She tells us what's going on.
Yep. Yep. And the big reveal, not loud, not annoying, not graphic. Just here it is, and then he just kicks over and dies.
Oh, and it's violent. He's actually
Yeah.
reaching out to attack her and he falls over.
Yeah.
She doesn't even flinch. She
Yeah.
doesn't flinch and at that point we think, oh, she knows about using poison.
Hmm.
Like she's good at this. And why is she good at this? And so that was the first climax of the pardon the term, the act of Julie. But then we get the second climax
Well,
when,
let me do one thing before you go to that part of it, because
yep,
that scene specifically, I contrast to an earlier scene that in class. He
yes,
had gotten so brazen. He's leaving a note while she's talking in class. Walks it. Everybody sees him.
yeah,
Put it up there, and then she looks at it and cancel class. And you got everybody's like got that look on their face, like what? What's going on? This
yeah.
is
Excellent point.
weird. You know.
Yes, excellent point. But then again, that's heightening his excitation. You know, that's heightening his excitement of him thinking he's the predator. That's
Yep.
even that's not her being scared. That's her conning him into thinking she's scared and
Yeah.
terrified. And
What
that
gets me
nobody
though
wants
is though what gets me though is that she did it so publicly
yeah.
in front of everybody, which kind of threw me for a bit.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's supposed to throw you for a bit until you get to the end, and then a good script makes you go back in your head to a previous scene. You know,
Yes, we have
um,
with that did.
And that's what used to happen with good movies. That even happened with I don't like bringing it up, but the first Iron Man movie, where something happens in Act Two, and you start thinking back to the way Tony was acting in Act One, and you start putting the pieces together. You
Hmm.
know, but that was back when we were allowed to have good scripts in movies.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. Oh,
and then we get to her. The ultimate pissing on someone's grave when she decides to burn his photographic materials.
yes.
And that is a great moment. And there's actually a shot where you see her looking at the materials. She's wearing her glasses, and you can see the reflections of the flames in her
Hmm.
glasses, meaning the fire in her eyes. She's
Yep.
always had fire in her eyes more than he had. He
Yep.
had no idea.
Yep. Absolutely. So the probably the ultimate Black Widow situation.
And then we get to, and then, if you don't mind, then we get
Yep.
to her scrapbook.
Yes. The scrapbook. What is it? A tie notch on a belt. Well, this teacher had a scrapbook of all the victims. You know, it just it was, which went further to the callousness. How cold she is, and how effective she is in playing that role, because she done this repeatedly, sucking people in.
Well, there was this implication because she does say there was one boy who lasted longer than you. He entertained me for 9 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
makes she makes that statement. But there's this strange, tiny possibility that she's a predator who's only choosing other predators. But that we can't necessarily put that
Yeah.
as a distinct possibility, because the guy at the end who she
Yep.
invites in, he looks like a sweet, nice guy, and we
Yep.
don't want him to die. I mean, this guy,
Yep.
he just wants some help from teacher because his grades ain't good.
And you know who that is, right?
No.
That's Harris, the guy that from Trapper John,
Oh,
Gregory
really?
Harrison. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Man,
So,
I wish I had that fleecy top he's wearing now. It's cold here in Australia.
oh geez, it's hotter than hell up here in Florida. So, oh,
But I mean,
I,
just
I
oh,
like the cold,
dude.
but it's so interesting that you brought this up, because I had found out about that today. Yes, the Mrs. Ed Gregory Harrison. Yes, exactly. He showed up because that's the one that's the one pulse for, like you said, is she only preying on those particular, but then you get this at the end, a kid that comes in really naively, and just you know schoolboy, innocent looking, just you know so you start to wonder, what's she going after. Maybe that's part of the thing, is she gets bored, she needs different types, not just one
Well,
type.
and we don't know, but maybe, if somebody is honestly innocent and she decides she's innocent, she lets them go, and
Mhm.
chooses somebody else. We don't know what her plan is. We don't know what her criterion is. But the point of the matter is, this was a really strong opening act out of 3 acts, an opening character out of 3 acts, and it basically set the tone for the rest of the movie. The only difference between this and the other two is that there were no supernatural elements involved.
Right.
Whereas in the second one, there's a very subtle supernatural element. And then in the third act, Amelia,
Yeah.
there is a forget it. This is all supernatural. We're not leaving you any doubt.
Yeah. Exactly. So, well, let's move to the second one, which is Millicent and Threes. uh
Millicent and Therese, yes,
yes.
sometimes called Millie.
Yes, it's basically a tale of sibling rivalry, focused on sisters Millicent Larimore, a repressed and prudish brunette, and Therese Lattimore, worldly, seductive, and free spirited blonde, both played by Karen Black. So let's look at this real quick. You can see the two different uh, characters here. Let's see. I got one here. This This is Millicent, right? Yep,
Oh yeah.
yep. And look, very homely, very plain. And let me, and then we'll see the other.
And she's also
Yeah.
looking a bit like a certain character we'd see in Raiders of the Lost Ark only a few years
Oh
later.
my gosh, would you? Oh my gosh, I didn't need to see that the other day. They need to pop that up, but uh, I was gonna be happy with Church Lady, but then but see, and you can see the Sister Trace here. But you know what? And you know who that is. You got to know who that is.
Oh, I apologize, dude.
Okay, if anybody chatting recognizes this guy from a comedy series in the '80s,
Oh,
the
Soap.
first, what's that?
Was it Soap?
I don't remember he's on there. No, I'm talking about theatrical releases. The first movie I ever saw that had boobs in it.
Oh, I don't know that one then. Which one?
I was just wondering if anybody in the chat that's there might know this before I reveal it. But um, I, let me get his name. It's let's see. Yeah, it's George Gaines. He played Commandant Eric Lassard of the Police Academy.
Oh God, you're right. I can't believe I forgot that. But
Yes.
honestly, here I wouldn't recognize him because he looks so different in Police Academy, and he's
Yeah.
so serious here as the doctor and as someone who's had people in the medical profession and psychological profession and the family. I
Yeah.
was just caught up in his role here and how concerned and how like keeping the distance with the patient. It's there's a term in psychology and psychiatry called transference,
Mm-hmm.
where and it's a very polite term for let's avoid the patient trying to turn on the doctor, and that's what's going on for the major scene in this chapter.
Well,
And there's
right.
a
We see
whole
it.
bunch. Go
Mm-hmm.
ahead.
We see it in both sisters though turn on him.
They
But
both do.
both
They
the
both.
one that was using him for help and the other that was rejecting the help because eventually Millicent just tells him you're no longer needed just
Oh
before
no,
the
no, no.
end.
I apologize. Transference. What I'm is when the patient tries to turn on the doctor,
Hmm.
oftentimes, and
Okay.
they're trying to they get uncomfortable with the situation the doctor is presenting, and so they sexualize the moment, which is what Therese is doing here a lot, a
Hmm.
lot. And then the moment he rejects her, they're saying stuff that's very direct and surprising for 1975. She accuses him of being a member of the alphabet community, for
Hmm.
one thing. You know, she
Right.
says maybe you don't like women,
Yeah.
and he just looks at her as if to say, "I'm not playing this game, little girl. I'm not
Yeah.
playing this game." And then she gets outraged, and that's when she starts screaming at him and slams the door. You know,
Hmm.
and that's something that actually happens with a lot of people who get called on their game, so to speak, in the way they're getting called on their game here. And there's a lot of good foreshadowing here as well. But even before
Hmm.
we get to this part that you're showing, Millicent was talking about how Therese had seduced their father. That's a direct line in the
Hmm.
script, and that's pretty hard to take because seduced, you could you could, if you wanted to, say, well, some people are seduced by glory, some people are seduced by fame. Seduced can be used in a semi innocent context, but when they say, and then mother died, and then there was the implication that Therese played with the pills for Therese and Millicent's mother, you're thinking, no, this can't be the case. And then when they start talking about the books that Therese had in the library, dealing
Hmm.
with voodoo, dealing with all this nasty stuff, you
Right.
realize that they're talking very directly and specifically uh, in regards to seduced. And this is one messed up chick.
Yes. Definitely. And the two polar opposites. You see here, homely, uh,
A
straight dress,
spinster.
long dress, and then the other revealing clothes, painted fingernails. I mean, just like the blonde wig. Just all kinds of, you know, really emphasizing the feminist. The sexual nature of it, and two two diametrically opposite people. You know, it's really a case like he says at the end. It's the um, most severe case of split
Dual
personality that
personality.
he'd seen.
Dual
Exactly, dual
personality. And
personality. Yeah.
the interesting thing is it's a personality that's split, and then one personality becomes so that's a psychological disorder.
Yep.
Uh, and then the second personality has a further psychological disorder,
Hmm.
which I won't go into, but it's listed in the DSM all the time. It's very well known to psychologists when you're using sexual power to manipulate others, and you get outraged when they see through your game and they're not going to buy into it.
Yep.
Uh, so very Amber Heard basically, and
Oh.
so you're getting two for the price of one with this story, and it's leading up to something that we don't expect, and as kids we don't really understand, but the moment you become a teenager or an adult you do understand, and that is the implication is to there was a tiny amount of guilt in Therese that built until the point she had to create a second personality to get rid of the evil, as stated by she states it very directly. She says evil, evil. She even puts an accent on the certain a preference on the second syllable.
Hmm.
And Millicent has to get rid of the evil, stop the evil of Therese, and the only way to do that, as we see, is using Therese's own methods against her, which leads to the voodoo book and the other books, and leading to the doll when she tells the doctor, we're not going to need you anymore. And she pulls out the doll, the voodoo doll, from the drawer.
Hmm.
And we see her pull out the doll and the pin. And we're thinking, okay, so are you going to kill Therese with the voodoo doll? But if they're the same person, it's almost like somebody taking themselves out so they don't cause harm to others anymore. And that's pretty deep for 1975.
Hmm.
Pretty
Yeah.
tragic.
It really, really is. You know, although I could not figure out how this ended, though, that was something that I could not figure out was how you know the connection with how she actually died. I mean,
Oh, I
the
can explain that. I can
yeah,
explain that.
yeah,
So the
please.
idea is if you make a voodoo doll of somebody and you put the pin in the right place, that person will die. She made a voodoo doll of her other self. They are contained in the same
Hmm.
body. So when she decided she couldn't put up with the evil of Therese anymore, Millicent also was by accident killing herself because
Mm.
they're contained in the same body. There was no way to kill Therese without killing Millicent too.
Yeah, but did it explain how she died actually?
No, they just showed the pulling out the voodoo doll, and then suddenly she was dead. Therese
Right.
was dead, and then the doctor pulls the wig off, and we realize they're the same person.
Okay. And that's one thing that I had with it was how it didn't really explain how she died. It's just that she died, and it dealt with the you know the you know the character was gone. Both personalities are gone. Like they said, Karen Black played four characters in this movie. So,
Hmm.
all right. Well, do you have anything else for this for right now? Because, like I think we said earlier, this is kind of like the palate cleanser.
Well, it is.
It's
It's
like,
like this. This is the episode where Mrs. Dadman could have gone up and gone to the microwave and heated up a burrito and come back and miss nothing. But it is worth watching. I do think it's worth watching. And the other
mhm,
thing, that this one is a little separate to the first and the third. This one is very much more like a stage play, and it's allowing Karen Black to use her stage play props, and she's using certain vocal intonations that are very much like a male actor who was very important in horror films of the 30s, 40s, and early 50s, John Carradine. Some of her vocal inflections are like John Carradine, and I think that was a tip of the hat. Plus, Carradine started as a stage actor who moved
mhm,
into film, and this is shot very much like a stage play. especially with the costumes and, the spectacles and the props, but also Karen Black being able to move around the sets in a certain way and approach other actors in a certain way. Where if you were seeing this on stage and you were 30 feet back in a cheap seat, you would still
Hmm.
catch everything. You'd still catch the cadence of her voice. And I think this was Dan Curtis giving her a little bit of what she wanted in the more artsy format. So it went a bit more artsy versus a bit more horror, if you know what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah,
Would you agree?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, but see, I'm not as familiar. See, the missus would probably pick up on the things like you're talking about with inflections and things like that than I would. Because I'm not as familiar with all of that stuff. But yeah, I would say it was more artsy. I mean, plus also you got to see the actress demonstrate two different talents that were diametrically opposed. You have
Yes.
straight laced, serious librarian type, almost puritanical, playing like a really, really old woman, but she was not old.
Yes. A spinster.
Yeah, a spinster. Yeah, and then you have the flawny, flirty younger one. They both had an evil temper, though. You can see the one commonality. They both could get angry.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
so,
Absolutely. But I did warn you that I was going to be making certain points for Mrs. Dadman specifically. I did warn you about
oh, I know. That's awesome. That's awesome. I know.
that.
Like
But
she said, she kind of figured this one out a little early on. But
yeah,
yeah,
I
I just
reckon.
the only thing a problem I had was the way they ended it with just the kind of I kind of left. What was it? It had to be more literal than the pen and the doll, but
Yeah.
but we got to be careful what we say, how we say it. But just I guess the main point is the character died. Both the individual died, so both characters died.
I
So.
understand what you're saying. Compared to the ending of the first and the third, I can agree with you that the ending for most people would be a bit lackluster, for a good term. A bit
Mm,
lackluster. It did not have the same impact. But the thing is,
hmm
you have these big musical notes in the first act, and then you've got the slow, quiet notes in the second act, and
hmm
that allows us to get our strength back for Act Three, Emily.
Oh boy, yes, yes,
Amelia.
yes, folks, and then this is the one where we really I wish Mark D with a C was able to be here now. I know he had wanted to. I've been trying to drag it out to see if maybe he come in late, but maybe he'll make a fashionable late. This oh, here, let me bring it down. All right, because I tell you what, this is the pièce de résistance. I can't speak French. I can't speak anything. Oh, here,
Yeah.
the missus is throwing in here now. That is your accountant brain having a hard time making connection. Yes, that is true. I am not artistic. I don't get things. I'm more analytical and observe. That's why when I observe things, I annoy the piss out of her because it's like, stop that. I'm like, well, that's a valid. You're not extrapolating a conclusion.
Ah! Was that Mrs. Dadman's statement? You're not extrapolating a conclusion, or was that yours?
That was mine, but that's essentially what she's saying. Either that her basic words are, "You're an idiot." We were at a church function once, and they did a Valentine's thing, and they had the thing. They had the couples up there, and they're like, the question was, what is your spouse's favorite line to say to people? I don't think it was to you directly, but to people. And I just said, "You're an idiot." And she looked
Yeah.
at me like, "What?" I said, "That's what you say all the time. You're an idiot to me, to everybody." And she thought about it. She's like, "Yeah, you're right." So
That's a good marriage. I like that.
absolutely. So all righty. So yes, you are correct. The third, the most famous of them all, is Amelia, which has given us. Let me take this down. Five people here, which this has given us this little, wrong part to do it. It's given us this wonderful thing. The thing, the
Yay!
avatar hungry wants every time I go on a show.
Yep. Ay, 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 ay.
Hey, dude, I will tell you. Okay, do you want to hear my stories now, or do you want to talk about the episode first?
Let's hear the story now.
Okay. All right. I've been around YouTube for a couple years now, and just as a viewer, I started with Homer Simpson with a pink donut. Would you stop that, Buddy Hepburn? It's not Saturday, Marvin. Mom, I need cheesy poos. Mom. Anyway, but stop with. This character is better than Starving Marvin. But anyway,
Yes.
okay. So it was Lorena Creole on one of her Sunday night shows was talking about things, and then she mentioned a Zuni fetish doll and mentioned Trilogy of Terror. Okay. The accountant auditor in me was like, oh dear God, I need to check this. Because when I was a kid, remember, this is a 1975 made for ABC movie. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm either 4 or 5 when this was out. I swear to you, I remember having physical dreams for years as a kid. Sometimes where I'm kicking at something coming after me, which we see in some of these scenes here. And I'm like, dear God, that I just was like, that couldn't be, could it? Well, after she said that, I looked it up and oh dear God, there's this guy. That's the thing that was in my nightmares. That's how powerful that stuck with me for years. It took me a few years. So to go further with the more modern story is in the middle of her stream, I flipped it to this as my avatar and it became a joke. Then I did it with Culture Casino was, and he laughed a bit at it. But then I go to Clobbering Times. He's like, "Ooh, what's that? The scariest avatar on YouTube." But the highlight was one night there was a Battlestar Galactica panel discussion, and I didn't know who these people. I knew one of them, the host of the channel. I really didn't know any of them at the time. I just kind of went to see, hey, it's a new Battlestar Galactica, and you got a couple people. Then you got this R.M. Briggs on it. Okay. So I go in the chat, I'm listening to him, and I say, hey, hello. And I said, I like the show, blah, or something. They're talking, and all of a sudden, she's like how she cites the scene, the counter clock. She just stops and like, we need to stop this for a second. Can we stop this? What is that? And she's picking at the avatar. What is that? That is scary. What is that? A puppet and it was like, it was so great to see. And then Mark D with a C, our friend is right there. Trilogy of Terror in the bottom line that they brought up. So that was my first connection with Raquel and Mark with this wonderful avatar. And, it stuck. So it stuck until I started streaming on my own and my kid made the banana, which is a combination of banana and football. But that's the story with me with the Zuni doll going back from when I was a kid.
And then I saw you in chat and I'm like, oh my God, someone's got a Zuni.
Yes. And I had to have a reason to have it. It was like, oh dear God. It was like, no. And then, but the thing was, I did it as a joke. I switched to it as a joke. But Clobby kept making a big deal of it in chat. Everywhere I went, the host kept causing conversation everywhere. So I was Dad Man walking with the Zuni doll. So it's like, so that's why. And I tell you, whenever I'm on Mark's show on Sunday night, because Hungry's out there in the chat, this is my avatar on Mark's channel on Sunday nights.
Just for you for that.
Exactly. So that's the big story with the Zuni doll. And dude, I'm telling you, I heard that when I remember that's how vivid that was. And I'll go ahead and say it now so I don't miss it, because we'll talk about how this works. But I tell you what, to me, this was a brilliant horror episode. There's a little bit of blood and some violence, but it was not over the top. It's not like modern. It was not gory. It was not too much, but I tell you, it caused so much terror. It was scary. Even as an adult, I get the chills hearing that voice and the 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 laughing and all that, and watching what he does. And and I think this is another case of how less is more. Whereas nowadays we might have really full slashers and stuff.
Yeah.
We did.
I don't equate, I'll be honest, I get in trouble for this old man shouting at clouds. I do not equate slasher with horror. The Zuni is horror.
But you know
Slasher,
what I mean. You know what I mean.
I
Though
know
current,
exactly what you
if
mean.
this was made now, it would be more of a slasher than a horror.
It would be, and it would be more direct and less subtle, and we wouldn't have all the things like you were saying with the Zuni's voice that made it special. And if you don't
Mhm.
mind, I just want to jump to a note
Go ahead.
about the Zuni's voice. And the thing is, this was done by a guy who also did voices such as Enric from Land of the Lost.
Hmm.
He did voices for Lidsville. He did voices for Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. He was uncredited, but he did the voice for
Oh wow.
Slugworth and Willy Wonka, and he even played a couple of live action non voiceover roles in Wild Wild West. Okay, so this actor, Mr. Walt Walker Edmonston, his magnificent. It was so brilliant of Dan Curtis to choose him to do the voiceover, because this guy was doing a natural voiceover when there were no digital cheats,
Hmm.
and this is all almost completely natural for him, and he has a huge range. He's not Mel Blanc, but he's a huge voiceover actor, and he would range, shall we say, the responses of the Zuni. So sometimes it was rage, sometimes it was, how do I get this woman? And then at a certain point, when we're going to talk about it in a while, the punching of the knife through the suitcase, it's a hunger. It's like I'm being starved of my prey. And it all comes through. And that sound is actually as terrifying or more terrifying
Yes.
sometimes than the visual, such as one of my favorite moments, which as a kid made me turn it off, and I had to watch it again when I was about 19 or 20, when
Hmm.
the knife is coming under the door at
Yeah.
Karen Black's feet,
Yeah.
and all we see is the knife with this natural motion, but we're hearing,
Yes.
and I mean, it's gut wrenching. You're just like, I can't handle it. Bye. I'm out.
I had forgotten about the noise till recently when I watched it again.
Hmm.
The noise, I did not realize it. My memories had focused on the physical, what I could see,
Hmm.
but actually watching it again, that you're right. The chanting, and sometimes I think he had a little laughter in there too.
There was something similar to laughter,
Yeah.
there was a moment, but then also, I hate to skip to the end, but I just want to focus on Mr. Edmondson's
Yeah.
magnificent voiceover, is
Hmm.
the way he controlled the voice when the Zuni was in the oven and it's slowly dying and getting more
Oh
hollow.
yes. Let me give me a second. Yes. So uh, let's see. I thought I had one there for that.
Oh, that's okay. But
Okay, but yeah.
while you're looking, I'll just go on. Where, I mean, there was a major change between Matheson's short story and the script he wrote. So all three stories are written by Matheson.
Hmm.
Mr. Nolan wrote the screenplays for the first two, but Matheson demanded to write the screenplay for the Zuni, and it's very close to his original short story, which I have, and I'll share with you and Mark over DMs later. It's very similar, 90% similar, and they did change some things, but unlike Hollywood today, the things they changed were for the better, not for the worse.
Right.
And so, like when Karen Black is talking to her mother, and we understand how horrible her mother is being to Karen Black,
Yeah.
Amelia, and the boyfriend Arthur. In the original short story, we actually get the dialogue in return. We hear what the mother is saying. It's awful, by the way. I don't want Mrs. Dadman to read it. It'll make her cry. Then you have the dialogue with Arthur. Arthur is a dickweed. Not gonna lie, he's a dickweed. But
Hmm.
it's more powerful in the film having the only voice be Karen Black's. Hers is
Hmm.
the only voice we hear aside from the Zuni.
Yes. And the Zuni there was a golden chain. See, you can see it in here. The scroll gave the warning about the chain. Keep the chain was to protect, to keep the spirit in. And as we see what happened, that it was really interesting because I think it was after she had argued with her mom, and they got off the phone, and then she went to go into the kitchen or to the bath, and then the chain just fell off.
Well, it was
You
more than
know,
that. It was actually very subtle. I don't mean to disagree. I'm just adding
no,
to
no,
your
go
point.
ahead. Go ahead. You might, and listen, I don't mind it because I may not describe it properly. Please describe it the way it you saw it.
Well, the phone conversation with the mom, I'm getting goosebumps here, and I'm also getting a little sad because I'm very sad for anyone who has a relationship with their mom like that.
Mhm.
Um, it upset her so much that at the end you could tell that Karen Black's character Amelia was almost in tears, and so she's frustrated. So she picks up the Zuni and she plonks it down because of her emotional state. She plonks it down on the table too hard, and
Yes.
that is what causes. So what's going wrong in her life is what causes her to plonk
Mhm.
the Zuni down and cause the disco chain to fall.
The disco.
It
And
is a
hey, Stunning and Brave Megatron, welcome in. Yeah, that's two people that calls it the original Chucky or Chucky's cousin. Oh, exactly. We got Star Martin first. Now we got Chucky appearance. So hey, I don't think she was really. She kind of looked at the chain, but I don't think she messed with it. I think it was
She
like you
fiddled
said.
with it. She played with it a little bit, but then when she plonked it down after the talk with her mother,
Mhm.
there was the Zuni doll shuddered, and then the chain fell at its feet, and that's when we all know, uh-oh, game on, because the scroll had told us what would happen. The scroll
Mhm.
told us.
Exactly. The scroll does not lie. So basically, then we got the phone conversation. She plunks the doll in. Yeah, yeah, it was jarred off when she plunked it down. Exactly. So
And it's
so
very
basically,
shortly afterwards. Then
mhm.
she goes and has a conversation with Arthur, but then she comes back, and the doll is not where it was
Yes.
on the table. That's subtle. That's not saying, "Oh, you're a dumb audience. We have to show the doll jumping off the table." We're not doing that crap. No, we're
No.
just showing the table is empty and letting you figure it out, audience.
Yeah, exactly. And it was interesting to see that in just that quick period of time that they the doll had made because she went to get a bath, I think, or I think she was going to run a bath. Then she came back and the doll had gone, and it was interesting that the doll had crawled under the couch really
Well,
at that point.
even before that, there was like she was questioning where could it go, and then one lampshade turns off. One
Hmm.
lampshade, and she's nowhere near that lampshade. Who
Yeah.
turned off the lampshade? We know
Well,
who turned off the
well,
lampshade.
see, instead, what happened is she poked her finger at. You see this, like in this scene here, you see she's got the spear at that point because she poked her finger on it. So
Or he poked her with a spear on the finger.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
we hear the pitter patter of little feet,
Yeah,
and then as the audience, we're terrified. Like,
Th-
uh-oh.
that's an important, serious detail though. The patter of little feet. We talked about the voice and stuff that and all, but the patter of the feet was like something else you could get
Right. So that
scared by.
clues us off first that this is real. This is not going to be a psychological disease or something she's imagining, like a bad episode of Star Trek. It was all a dream. It was all an alien testing you. Screw you guys. This is real. They're not lying to us. So when we hear the patter of little feet first, it tells us this is a physical, real entity that is going to menace her. But later
Mhm.
on, very shortly, anytime we hear the patter of little feet, it means she's in trouble. He's coming at her again.
Exactly. Well, let me say a couple of things with the chat. Stunning Brave said, I never understood the feel of killer dolls. Even if the turd was real, I'd kick the shit out of it. Hey, but this is a Zuni doll. You wouldn't be able to defeat the Zuni doll.
No,
I like this one because what we're going to see, and seriously, I joke with that, but seriously, when the ending reveals that there's more than just a physical doll here, but
yes, and
but we'll.
also both in the short story, and I'll go into the short story when we get into the overview.
Mhm.
Um, in the short story and in this adaptation, the screenplay by Matheson, it's established that the Zuni is far more strong than it should be for its size. It's pushing against that door, nearly pushing her back when she's using all her strength, and she's 3 times the size of the Zuni doll. She's got
Yeah.
all her weight against that door, and
Yep.
it's pushing back and nearly opening the door. And sometimes it does open the door.
Yep. Yep. And howdy, Castle. Welcome in. Good to see you. Oh, buddy. Yeah, I kind of wondered about that. Putting the meat in the oven and left it unattended to go get a
Yeah.
shower and stuff like that. So,
Well, also, just as a joke, to because it would kill Mark C with a D. Okay, when she's preparing the meat, she puts like 1/3 of a sprinkle of salt on it, 1/3 of a sprinkle of pepper on it, and sticks it in the oven. Woman, you are not seasoning the meat. What are you doing? That's a waste of steak.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, like I said, I saw this as a 5-year-old for the first time, and it just really left an impactful memory. Seriously, it did. But see, you got this doll that it disappeared. Then they come back. Then that tension of this quiet, the quiet really uh, added to the effect of the I and the and the pitter patter of little feet. Because I think each of those were devices to really build the drama and the tension, the
Yes,
terror of the situation, because you're like, oh God, we're I can't see what there's something there. I can't see where it's coming from. And let me say
yes.
hello to Jeremy real quick. Jeremy, hey, welcome. Hey, good to see you. Glad y'all are here tonight. Make sure y'all hit that like button, sub if you haven't. We're at 283 subs, guys. Let's get to 300 very soon. So hey, but I got the great Hungry for Better Sci-Fi Scripts tonight with me, and we're talking all things Trilogy of Terror. This guy has got lots of notes on it, so make sure you don't miss your notes. Okay, make sure we get everything in that you want to see.
I'll do
Um,
my best.
but see, we had the battle in the living room. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's like one of those things that goes all over the place. You can't
Yes,
get the front door because the front door's been locked, so she
yes,
can't get out. Then you go, then it goes to the back to the living room, then to the bedroom, then to the bathroom.
yes.
And I can see this was a cool scene here, right here. I thought was like it's like Navy SEAL Zuni, or Pirates of the
Oh my
Caribbean
God.
Zuni.
No, it was so brilliant to have the knife in the teeth, because that's not actually in the short story. That is a detail that Mr. Curtis put in. And I love that because it's almost like supervillain status at this moment. He Before we actually understood what supervillain status would mean.
Yeah.
And there are so many scenes like this where it's just so intense and it's so fast and it moves. People don't realize how fast this is. You have the living room scene moving to the bedroom scene. There's
Hmm.
barely a couple of seconds between them.
Right.
And there's the moment the Zuni activates, shall we say,
Hmm.
he activates, um, there is no let up for the rest of the show. None.
No, it's complete intensity. I mean, the whole time, folks. If you've not seen this before, even if you don't watch the other two, watch this Amelia with the Zuni dog. It is. Again, I might have said it earlier. To me, this was a case of less does more. You know, with I think it's the brilliance of the horror in the 1970s that they were able to make it so realistic, yet it wasn't CGI. It was practical effects, but the acting, it all went together. The sound, just all together, really made it terror. Because like I said, when I had watched it again recently, I got goosebumps.
Me too.
I still get goosebumps with looking at this thing and thinking about it, running around and chanting and everything else. So
And it's the motion of the puppet which is done completely by hand, is more fast and furious than any car movie, pun intended. And
Yeah.
a figurine is not meant to be a real creature. A voodoo doll or a figurine is not meant to be a real creature. And one of the aspects of this, which is a little bit culturally, I don't know, but the Zuni tribe in the United States is actually renowned for making metaphysically infused figurines. So you would get what they call Zuni fetishes. So you
Mhm.
would have a bear fetish, you would have a wolf fetish, and they would carve these out of turquoise and other minerals, sometimes adding silver. And they were reputed to have magical properties and be able to be helping somebody in the real life to affect them in a positive way. So this
Right.
is Matheson saying, well, what if there was an evil version of the Zuni fetish? And that's actually quite brilliant,
Well,
especially for the story came out, believe it or not, in 1969. So we have the story come out in 1969. We have for later notes, we'll talk about maybe at the end of the show later on. We have the one of the creepiest episodes of Night Gallery featuring the doll, and it's just called The Doll. And that comes out in the early 70s.
is
But
this
then
the
we have
same doll though?
no, not the same doll, not the
Okay.
same doll. And then we have, although teeth were a major part of it, then we have this come out based off Matheson's 1969 short story, and it is just amazing how accurate it is to the short story. But the movement of it, um, just the fact that it is obviously a figurine works with the script, because if we CGI'd it, if we made it any more realistic, it would not be as scary, because then we're losing that understanding of this is
Yeah.
a inanimate object which is now chasing us and wants to murder us.
Right. Now you mentioned the Zuni. Now is this based? If you can address it, is this based off real like Native American mythology or a real tribe, or how does that?
The Zuni tribe is a real tribe,
Okay.
and it's mainly based in far western New Mexico, but it ranges all the way up to Colorado, so I understand. It was a big tribe. It was a very big tribe, and they did carve fetishes. I had some Zuni fetishes myself. I used
Okay.
to own. I had the bear, I had the wolf, and I had a bird, which I couldn't figure out whether it was supposed to be an owl or something else.
Right.
And so the whole background of there being a real Zuni tribe, that's true. Uh, Fetishes,
Wow.
small sculptures being made, that's true. And in the original story, the Zuni is only 7 inches high. Now that does not work for a movie. So I'm
Right.
glad they actually scaled it up to about what would that be? About 13 inches, 14 inches?
That's what I was thinking about. Yeah, at most 16 inches, but probably 13, 14 is about right.
But at 7 inches, you can't pull it off. It's not
No.
realistic.
No.
It's not going to be scary. I mean, at that point, Karen Black could just slam her heel down on a little bastard and he'd be done.
Or like
Uh,
Stunning said, the golf clubs.
golf clubs. A golf club would have been good against the Zuni. Um, but
Yeah.
but so
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, there is some real anthropological stuff that goes into this more so than the other two stories.
See, and I
Uh,
didn't know that. I was not aware of that. So if there's more that you know about, please share it because I'm learning a lot with that tonight. Because I did not know that that was had that real connection to real life or to real tribes or stuff. You know, a lot of times when they give you something like this, you don't realize that it's really based off of something. You know, a lot of times you just think somebody creates something out of thin air, but that's really interesting to know that this really had a basis in what's in the real world.
yes, and that makes it more powerful. And there were a couple of people I spoke to back in the '90s
Mhm.
before the internet got like really uh, scrubbing everything and making helicopter parenting for the internet, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Uh, um, where there were a couple of people I spoke to who were Native American, because I did some Native American artwork at one point, and they liked what I did. Where this movie came up, and they said, we don't like that. We don't like that. We appreciate that people were paying attention to us, but the fact of the matter is, the only time we made any fetishes, any figurines, is
Hmm.
for the sake of help. So the idea was that you get this little, you get this little bear figurine, like a bear Zuni fetish, and you would put it under your pillow, and you'd sleep with that under your pillow over the course of several nights for helping what you needed help with. If the bear, particularly the bear, was able to help you with that. So each fetish would have a different function. They would each be able to help you with a different thing. So one could help you with wisdom, one could help you with being strong enough to face with really bad situations in your life, like drought or lack of food or hunting.
Hmm.
And you would choose the specific fetish to put under your pillow, under your head, and sleep. And over the course of weeks, if you gave into it, you would receive that help. But you had to respect the Zuni, the spirit of the fetish itself in return, and do something in return. So this is an interesting take on it. It's a kind of an awful take on it, where as we see with we'll get to it, the end scene, there is a trade-off, but it's an
Hmm.
awful trade-off.
Well, which is, I mean, this thing was just full of drama and stuff like this. You don't expect it because we talk about the scale, but like this, the little
Yeah,
joker's up there opening a door.
terrifying, terrifying. But you know what was more terrifying to me? And this was a cutoff point for a lot of women I talked to who are of our age who saw it when they were kids,
Hmm.
is when she's run into the bedroom and she's hiding on the bed and it's forced its way through the door, and then you see the tugging on the bed covers
Oh,
of the
yes.
Oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps right now. It's and it's crawling up the bed, and we cut to Karen Black's face, and then we see it just like ay, 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 on the top of the bed, and that means not even your bed is safe. Not
No,
even your
nothing is safe. And that tension is like, instead of it just pouncing on like a cat on top of your bed, it's that slow creep,
yes,
building the drama and the terror, and then all of a sudden it's there. Yeah, that is interesting that you mentioned that because I did make a mental note of that scene. But to that detail because they could have easily just had to keep chasing, but it was a change of pace though. It's
yeah,
like it was now it didn't stop, but it slowed down. It to rebuild the drama. Like the door would shut, then
yes,
try to cut through. Or the suitcase. Then he starts. Then it's quiet. Then he starts cutting through. Just you had that case there where she's on the bed. He slows down, but then it comes and rebuilds. So it just uh, continual action, but they kept changing the pace to throw you off. You couldn't get comfortable. You know.
exactly. And when he was on that bed and he slowed down for a moment, it was almost like um, when a big cat, like a cougar or a mountain lion or a panther, is slowing down right before the pounce.
Yep.
Right before the pounce.
Yep.
Oh dear,
So
look at that.
yeah, but yeah, that's the scene you're talking about on the bed where it comes up and goes quickly like that. So it's very quick. Uh, but when it happens though, it is quick. But it was slow leading up to that. So, but yeah, it was a very intense scene, and that's why this would definitely be traumatic for a 5-year old kid to watch it.
Dude, it
Uh,
was traumatic for me at 10.
yeah, I just like, dang. What's funny, last year I blamed my mother. I was like, Mom, why'd you let me watch this stuff? And my mom's like, I don't think I did. I think it was your dad and your sister watch that crap, not me. Like, oh yeah, okay, that's probably right. Hey, we got 10 people with us tonight. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody that's here.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
I
Y'all are
hope
coming in for the best part, the number 3 episode.
I hope we're not getting only 10 because I'm on.
Uh, That's okay. I'm having a blast hanging out with you, and it's awesome though, and all these people that are in the chat here. I don't know if they're scared or what, but hey, but you guys, if y'all know about this, share some thoughts or comments you have with the show. If not, what are some of the classic terror moments from some of the shows that you may have seen, and we'll see if we can throw them in here with this. But okay, we talked about the gets the doll, drops it down, chain falls off, goes to do a bath, doll disappears, pokes the finger. Then we got running around the living room to the bedroom. Uh, to the
Oh,
bathroom.
we
Yeah.
have to yeah, we have to bring up shutting the door and then the knife just going underneath the door at
Yes.
Karen Black's feet because that's also utterly terrifying. We're not seeing the Zuni. We're just hearing the Zuni. We're seeing that knife. And
Yeah.
where's she going to put her feet? You know, she basically has to make a choice of holding her back against the door or getting
Yep.
cut by that knife. It's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And the thing's just slinging that knife all around. I mean, and other times she tried to pick the knife up with her hand, but could never grasp it. So,
And
um,
Mr. Edmonston, he's doing these great little variations in the voice, like when he's not getting her with a knife. There's this
mhm.
little like variation, like where is she? There's a questioning tone in the Zuni, like it's
They
amazing.
really made the doll come to life. You know, that's what's so really impressive is that the doll really came to life in more ways than one. Not just because it was supernaturally animated, but with the voice acting with it, it just really very haunting. I will say,
Very haunting,
yes,
very haunting.
definitely.
And Karen Black is, I mean, she's putting everything physically into this role. The way she's turning her head, twisting her head, eyes going wide, eyes going shut, a flipping of the hair. The time where, and we'll get to this in a bit, where like the Zuni is on her. I mean, the horror of the moment where the Zuni doesn't have the
Yeah,
knife and he said, and the Zuni says, "Screw it, I'll use my teeth," and it's
yeah,
right on her neck.
yeah.
It's right. It's right on her neck, and she's grabbing it, ripping it off, which is tearing the flesh off her neck, and she slams it into that lampshade. Karen
Yeah.
Black is putting all her body weight into that, like
Well, hey, go back to the bathroom, rolling
yes,
it in a blanket and or a towel and trying to drown it. It was like it could not be stopped. I mean, and you know we've seen plenty of bad acting over the years, but this was very well acted. You might think it's silly or whatever else, but like you said, the physical demand on this was amazing, and the performance. I mean, she really got into it. It was really very physical, and it was not half acted like we saw in the fake Jedi movie number 8 of the Mouse trilogy. They that bad acting and lightsaber duels where like you could see people pulling back their shots, and they left it in the film.
I
You know,
know.
but it's
And,
like in this case, she worked her butt off, and it was you could tell. So
and to back up what you're saying, then we have that long shot of the long shot of the room looking back into the bathroom, and we just see him rise from the
this
bathtub.
scene this one right here, folks. Yes, we like it would be great if we had the video, but just picture this, like Hungry's saying. Imagine looking down a hall, just the tub there, and then this thing just rises, that black hair first thing, then the brown skin, then the eyeballs, and then all that just slowly rising out of the tub, looking at you with those
And
piercing eyes.
the whole while we know, even if he loses the knife, he's got those teeth.
Yes,
There's
yes,
no way to stop this thing until you destroy this thing. And
right.
the other thing too is, as much as I love Sam Raimi and I adore the first two, I actually like all three Evil Dead films. I like number one best, then number two second, then number three third. The Raimi cam being low on the ground for a supernatural creature chasing someone was done here first. It was not done in Evil Dead. It was done here. We had the Zuni cam rushing up, going against Karen Black. And there was something very frightening in the first time it happens. We don't have to show any shots or anything, but the first time it runs at her, we're seeing it from his perspective, and it's so fast, and we're hearing the voice, and Karen Black is in her bathrobe, and actually the bathrobe is opening up, and he's almost running between her legs, which subconsciously is really scary. There is this little monster with a knife in these teeth running towards a woman's thighs and legs, and her legs are a little bit open, and that is a bit too much to take.
Mm. Yeah, I tell you what, and folks, he's not kidding it. It's not underestimating it because you just described that as what I've said earlier for people that may have come in late. This thing terrorized me. I had real nightmares for years because of this thing. that camera feeling like that is what I felt when I had those nightmares. It
Yeah.
felt like I was crawling away, having to kick something and keep it to get from getting me. And I mean, that was something. That was scary. So I imagine even if you're acting it and it's coming at you, it's got to be something else with the bathrobe and everything else. But just imagine that fear. I mean, like I said, I experienced it, but I would again though. I think it gets back to the brilliance of a lot of these older shows in the '70s and stuff with what they had. I think they managed to do a lot more with a lot less than, uh, you know, and it was filmmaking it just this one always stuck with me, and that's why when you, Mark, and others with this stupid one, I'm like, gee, thanks, guys.
It's not stupid. There's nothing stupid about this film. This is a brilliant film, and I'll be honest. As a joke that I have not shared, after when I turned it off, as many kids did when it first came out in the '70s. All right,
Mm,
I was not going to sleep on a proper bed. I actually started sleeping on a futon on the ground because you couldn't hide under a futon on the ground.
right.
The Zuni could not hide under the futon. So see, it got to me for about a month, and I would make sure all the closets were closed. I mean,
Hmm.
it really got to me as well.
Oh
To a
yeah. Or Mark says, lock your ovens.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we'll go ahead and finish up this one with the last scene because the fight then goes into the to the kitchen. Well, actually, two more scenes. The fight goes into the kitchen, and I had the scene up just a second ago. Let me find it again. Find it again because they're fighting in the kitchen.
Well,
You
we got
got
to
the
talk about the
knife.
suitcase, dude. We got to talk about the suitcase.
Oh yeah, the suitcase. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, this is one of the only times as a kid and an adult I laughed, but I
Yeah.
wasn't laughing because it was funny. It was a laugh of victory for Karen Black because we've got the whole situation where she's hiding and she sees the suitcase and she starts opening it, and we're all thinking, what is she thinking? Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. Is she thinking this? And then she opens the door and the little bastard goes, ay, 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 ay. He runs right into the suitcase and she slams it shut. And I'm pumping my fist in the air, going, yes, go, Amelia, go, you got him. That's fantastic. I got goosebumps talking about it right now. And he's screaming, and she's like, no, I've got you now, you little prick.
Yeah, but it
But
doesn't stop him though, because when you again we're back to pacing.
yes,
You
exactly.
don't. He doesn't do it immediately. It takes a few seconds. She starts to relax, lets her guard down a little. Then you see the knife starting.
Oh, just sawing up and down, and
Yes,
then our stomach sinks. It's like, oh no, she did so well, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. This creature is too cunning. It's too smart. It's figuring it out. It's going to cut its way through. And then that horrible scene with her trying to use her thumb and forefinger to get the knife away from it, and she
yes,
cuts her hand. Oh, but then there's a beautiful moment when his little awful head pops. Oh, that was funny too, though, a
yes.
little bit. When his head pops up, going, "Here's Johnny," right?
Here's
and
Zuni.
and she starts. I mean, to her credit, she's already got the screwdriver in her hand, and
Yeah.
she is stabbing that little mofo in the head. She is like an Amazon goddess going, no, I'll fight for my life. I'll fight for my life. Screw you.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah." And he starts pretending to die in the suitcase. And we all know he's not really dead. And
No.
then she starts opening it to check on him, and we're saying to ourselves,
Don't.
no,
No.
don't do
Like
it.
every '70s horror movie. No. Don't stop.
And then it just, I mean, he doesn't have the, oh man. And the moment he's hanging on her throat, it's just like, this is too much.
Oh
This is
man,
too much.
that's crazy.
It's
Well,
beautiful. But
it
then
is
you
wonderful.
know, eventually we get to the kitchen scene.
Yes, exactly. And then that's where it happens. He jumps on her neck, bites her, like bites her big time with those teeth, as we've seen.
Yeah.
And then she ends up putting him in the oven. And this is where we see here is where she's got him in the oven. She's holding him in, and
And
he
he's so
catches
strong
fire.
because they've established he's so strong, even though he's 14 inches tall, that she's got to
Mhm.
brace her leg against the kitchen counter to
Yeah.
put weight against the oven to hold him in. And that's just brilliant. And we hear
Yes.
the banging on the wall. Ba, 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 ba. Ay, 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 ay. Ba, 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 ba. Ay, 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 ay. And it's just, oh, man.
Yes, and Mrs. Yeah, that they needed the scene to break some of the tension for a moment so you can deal with the second part. I
Thank
do
you, Mr.
agree.
Deadman. Excellent point.
Yeah, because I mean, you get this, like we said earlier on, this was a nonstop episode. Once it got going, it didn't stop. But you don't have to go 100 miles a minute every second. Sometimes that pacing allows you to get a breath to recreate some tension. Or, like you said with the suitcase, yeah, she did it. No, don't open it. What are you thinking? You know, oh my gosh. You know, it's like the commercial, one of those stupid commercials that are out that are like all the fake horror movie things. And there's a car there. No, let's run into the barn with all the swords and knives and stuff. Good idea. And even the killer's like, okay, you know, just, but hey, oh my gosh. So basically, what we have here, the Zuni doll catches on fire, right? You
Pretty
started
quickly.
very quickly. He's in there, kind of gets quiet. Then this took me a little bit used to getting to. Then she opens it thinking it's gone, but
Well,
is it
thinking
really
it's
gone?
dead. Thinking it's dead.
I'm gonna line up the next picture, okay? But
Mm.
because you know you got that feeling that you know she's gone, you know that she won. He you know that the Zuni doll's been defeated, right? You got that
Uh-huh.
feeling. Then when she opens it and then screams.
Well, see that was led up to, like I said, with Mr. Edmondson's acting, where you heard the Zuni doll screams getting lower and then echoing more and lower, and it
Mm-hmm.
was and we don't know if it's real or a fake out, but she thinks it's real. She thinks it's dead, and she opens it, and we're still seeing the
Mm-hmm.
flames from the Zuni doll, but we're seeing her face as well and her eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
then we hear that last final thing, that scream of victory, which is actually in the short story by Matheson from '69, a scream of victory, and we see her eyes just wide with horror, because even though we don't know yet for the next minute
Mm-hmm.
what's
Right.
going on,
Right.
she knows. Karen Black's character Amelia knows what's going on.
Right. Because what we then go from is that shot to a phone on the floor in the living room.
Right.
She walks out there. She pops the locks off the door.
Yes.
Or actually, I think she makes the call to her mother. Yeah, let's hang out. Come on over. And pops the locks off. And I don't know whether I can show swords or not, because otherwise I would. But you see her over. She crouches down on the floor
Yes.
and takes a machete or a big steak knife, pounding the floor with this look.
Yes, exactly. And I got a couple of statements about that. So number one, um, when we have the final scream of Karen Black, when we're seeing her face from inside, from the Zuni perspective, inside the oven, she screams, and then it's a quick fade to black, not a cut to black, a quick fade to black,
Right.
and then we just see the phone going beep 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 on the floor, which is what real phones used to do, ladies and
Mm-hmm.
gentlemen, back in the days of
Oh, and they had
landline.
rotary phones.
Exactly. I had
And
a
my
rotary phone.
and Mrs. noted that they were very short numbers. They were like ones and twos because
Yes.
she didn't go very far down the dial.
Excellent point, Mrs. Dadman. Excellent point. And then we see that phone, and then we see Karen Black's legs walking towards it. Suddenly, there's no blood on her legs. She had blood on her legs the whole
Mm-hmm.
time. They're all clean now. Her body language is different. The body language is self assured. It's slow. It's like a panther stalking. And she picks up the phone and she calls her mother, and the voice is very different. The facial expressions are very different. We're getting a tip off, not telegraphed, but a tip off. And that's when she finishes with the phone, and she moves into the living room, and she goes to the door, and she is pulling off the lock apparatus of the door, but she didn't have the strength to do that earlier in the episode. She didn't have. Now she's pulling it off like she's Superman or something. She,
How could that
massive
little
strength.
booger do that though? That's what got me. How the little booger could seal that thing up that tight.
But I mean, the point is, it's very clear. Karen Black's character is now much stronger than she used to be, and then she goes back to the middle of the floor, and she crouches down. Look at the body language this beautiful actress did. The shoulders, and they've changed the makeup too. But the shoulders, the way the legs are spaced, she is completely embracing the idea, which partially was in Matheson's original script, but
Mm-hmm.
Karen Black. A lot of people say Karen Black came up with this end scene. No, she came up with the teeth and the grin part. That was what she came up with. But Matheson, to his credit, came up with the stabbing the knife
The
into the
floor.
floor, waiting
You
for the
heard that
mother to
thump.
arrive.
Yeah, you heard that thump.
The thump,
Thump.
thump, thump. So
Thump.
it's totally accurate to the original work and short
Mm-hmm.
stories, which people like Raquel complain, why don't people hire people who wrote short stories to do stuff and do it accurately in science fiction and horror? Well, this is one time where that really did happen. This really did happen. And there is nothing more brutal in terms of what they call a downbeat ending than when Karen Black starts smiling and we see the Zuni teeth.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's. I knew something was wrong with the way she was acting. That was obvious, but yeah, going back, assuming the position, then with the that big old knife, you're like that ain't normal.
Yeah, and that was
I think our heroine lost this battle.
and it was a very tribal body posture, going back to not only Native Americans but people in Papua New Guinea and people here in Australia. That's a very classic posture, and I give credit to Mr. Curtis for giving Karen Black the license to embrace that posture. And we don't. She's dead now, sadly to say. R.I.P. Karen Black, you got us. But for all we know, she could have researched it herself. A lot of actors do have the strength and the temerity to research things themselves and
Mm-hmm.
add that to the role. And I would like to think that she did, and Mr. Curtis just went along with it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love her. I mean, Karen Black is one of my favorite actresses of all time. And
Mm-hmm.
to have somebody with this much talent do a truly terrifying but thought-provoking horror film just makes my heart sing, you know?
What other movies or shows was she in? Do you
Uh,
remember
she was
offhand?
in, she was in a whole bunch of stuff. She was in a film called The Asphyx, AES PHIYX. She also was in one of the Mirror Mirror movies as the mother. That's a very nasty little horror film. Um, but she was in a couple of other things as well. I'd have to pull up her IMDb, but
I'm
she
looking now.
um, she she never shied away from genre material, and like I said earlier, a lot of people would. But I think the fact that, I mean, Curtis was still a big name at this point in 1975. I think that she probably would have trusted Mr. Curtis a lot. And if she saw the name Matheson, she would have trusted it a lot. And then you add the name William Nolan. Uh, Nolan and Curtis had previously done another, I recommend this to Mrs. Dadman, another great made for television horror film called The Norless Tapes. And that starred Angie Dickinson from Policewoman,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and also Michael Finnis from the show that Clobby likes a lot called The Invaders. And it's not up to this grade, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does their best work. I would say that Trilogy of Terror, Maddie's daddy will disagree with me and say that Dark Shadows was his best work, but I think Trilogy of Terror was his best work. But he also did the Norless tapes, and then after this, he did another one that was fantastic that I love as a creepy made-for-television horror film called The Curse of the Black Widow, and that's not
Yeah.
euphemistic. It's not euphemistic. There is a big murderous spider in Curse of the Black Widow, and that was made very clear by
Yeah.
the advertising at the time.
I'm looking at, yeah, I don't really recognize anything. I guess she was in one episode of Miami Vice.
Well, that was
Oh,
great. She was also in, I think it was an episode of The Hitchhiker. It may have been Tales from the Dark Side, but I think it was The Hitchhiker. Um, and she
oh,
was
she was
in
in Burnt Offerings.
oh, she was the star of Burnt Offerings. That's one of
Was
my
it that? Oh God, that was with that evil Betty Davis, right?
evil Betty Davis.
No, I know. Oh
Betty
no,
Davis,
that freaky dude and the chauffeur dude. That guy was the guy that freaked the hell out of me.
yeah, but
The tiki
also
doll and that chauffeur guy.
the irony is Betty Davis was not an evil person in Burnt Offering. She was going against type. It was also produced by Dan Curtis
Uh,
and was basically a Dan Curtis movie. And it also had Oliver Reed, who was the
yeah,
bad boy of Hollywood at that time.
yeah,
Oliver Reed and Karen
yeah,
Black as a married couple.
yeah,
And it was a very hard movie to take. It's
yeah,
considered one of the best horror films ever made.
yeah. I meant evil in terms of I meant it more for that stupid chauffeur. That chauffeur with that smile and that glasses and stuff. That I like another one that freaked me out as a kid. That dude, that dude with the it's yeah. How did I see? We didn't have 300 television stations, DVDs, and stuff like that. We got subjected to what the family had to watch. I'm like,
Yeah.
dang. So
No,
we had
but
to live with the ramifications of it.
I mean, well, the thing is, my family loved Karen Black. Oh, like
Hmm.
part of my family loved Karen Black. Part of my family loved Oliver Reed. I liked horror films, so we could agree to go see Burnt Offerings in the theater because it
Yep.
was a theatrical release. We could see that, right?
Yep.
Sometimes, like you'll understand this, there's a negotiation with the family over television and film,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
Speaking of cheesy horror films, there was a great one with Tony Curtis himself. Tony Curtis in the 1970s called The Manitou, which also had Native American stuff involved in it. And we got to see that at the drive-in, but I was really frustrated because the dialogue was really good and I couldn't understand any of it
Right.
listening to that 800 pounds of metal attached to the window.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the best films to watch at the drive-in were actually kung fu films because, it didn't matter. It was just visual.
What about Jaws at the drive-in?
Oh, I have to admit, because I'm Australian and we got a shark issue here, I was
Yeah.
not allowed to see Jaws until I was 12
Oh wow. Yeah.
because my mother thought that it would scare me off swimming, and I used to be very into body surfing at the
Yeah.
beach, and so I saw it. I saw the cut version on television at age 12, and I looked at my mom and I said, "You were right. I'm glad you didn't let me see this."
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Well, if you want to, we'll go ahead. We still got 7 people with us. We'll go ahead and move into the overview. But Buddy is saying there's a follow-up segment with the Zuni doll and Trilogy of Terror 2. I have not
That's a
seen that
terrible
yet.
movie. No, it's a terrible movie. I love you. I like you, Buddy Hepburn, but that is Dan Curtis basically redid Trilogy of Terror. It was mainly about the Zuni, but eh, I if you haven't seen Trilogy of Terror or you haven't seen Trilogy of Terror 2, go ahead watch Trilogy of Terror 2 and then watch Trilogy of Terror because it's so much better. So
Mm.
much better.
Yeah, I've seen it out there, but I've never watched it. I don't know. One Zuni doll was enough. I don't need an encore performance, you know?
They bulked it up. It was made in the 90s, 96, and they bulked up the Zuni doll and the movement was not as
Let's
fast
see
and not
why.
as scary.
Why? Why?
Exactly.
Because the terror is in something that you is not physically imposing. Like she said, you're ugly. You know, it's just a stupid, scrawny, ugly doll. You know, what was the quote? Let me see if I can find the quote. She said, let's see. Yeah, she comments out like, God, are you ugly? You know,
Yes.
I mean, it's dismissive. It puts it down and all that. But then it's like the Star Wars figures of the 90s and 2000s where they're on steroids, you know?
Yes,
Like,
precisely.
yeah, you don't need that extra stuff. Let the you judge things on size, contrary to what Yoda says, but but still, the whole thing is you're underestimating this thing.
Yes.
It does not need to be jacked up or bigger or this other stuff because it is so supernaturally powerful.
And the fact that it is small and spindly and so ferocious is what makes it terrifying.
See, I didn't notice that detail. Well, I never connected it with that one scene in the kitchen with the foot up on the counter to brace.
Yeah.
I always kind of thought that's weird, but never thinking that that's how violent, that's how forceful that creature is.
Well, I mean, it was there were several times where it's bashing against either the bathroom door or the other bedroom door, and it's nearly pushing her aside. It's
Yeah.
so strong. And that's just amazing. It's
Yeah.
like they said it was the spirit of a Zuni warrior
Hmm.
contained within the fetish, within the doll. So that means you've got a Native
Yeah.
American who might be 6 foot and 210 pounds of muscle contained in this 14-inch doll. So that means all that strength, and
Hmm.
that's established in the script, all that strength is going to be in the doll. So she's really, although it looks 14 inches, she's facing off somebody who's probably taller than you or I.
Yeah.
That's deep
That.
shit, man.
Oh yeah. Dang it. Imagine if that thing was 6 feet tall, 4 feet tall.
Oh, it'd be
No.
unstoppable. It'd be unstoppable. But it
Yeah.
wouldn't be as scary. There's something more scary about something 14 inches that can outthink you every
Yeah.
time. You
At
know,
every turn. At every turn. And every time she tried something, it was not good enough. It was not right.
and
Every
what's
t- every time she got outmatched, outclassed, and running for it nowhere to go. The door was locked. This little thing had sealed the daggum apartment in.
Well, also, and I think this would have been one of the moments that really got goosebumps for Mrs. Dadman. There's a moment we don't see the Zuni at all. She's locked herself in her bedroom, but we start seeing and hearing pounding at the lock with a knife, and we're realizing the Zuni is figuring out to use the knife to
Hmm.
pick the lock.
Yep.
Terrifying.
Yep. Very evil. Very. Can't
And her
underestimate that thing.
her window won't open. It's very clear she's thinking, okay, maybe I can chuck the suitcase out if I can open the window, but her window is stuck.
No.
Oh.
No. Oh God. Buddy Hepburn says the doll isn't going to mess with Mr. T. The gold chains would terrify it. Ah,
I love Mr. T. I've got no comment. I love Mr. T. I always have. Uh,
all right. And folks, I will say for my sports fans out there, LSU has beaten Wake Forest tonight, which will force a deciding game from that bracket of the Men's College World Series tomorrow. I believe it's a game between LSU and Wake Forest. The winner will move on to play the Florida Gators in a best-of-3 championship series this weekend. Go Gators in one decent sport for them right now. Sorry, Hungry. I had to throw a little sports ball in there because it just finished up. But yeah, well, we've talked about each of the acts and stuff, and you mentioned that you had an overview. So let's take it from the overview standpoint while we still have some time,
okay.
and
Let
let's
me
see,
just.
and make sure we get all the point. Oh God, Mrs. says almost had a smoked zini doll. Really enjoying talk and forgot had food in the oven. LOL. Wow.
Oh, well, I mean, there are certain things about this film with the overview that are, shall we say, metaphysical or philosophical, but they tie the stories in together. So if you're going to do an anthology thing, I do like it to be tied in together because otherwise it's lazy. And Dan
Mhm.
Curtis was never lazy, and neither was Mr. Nolan, and neither was Mr. Matheson. So one of the things that we have as an overriding theme here is that we all have women that are being confronted with aspects of their lives that they either cannot control or they really should be able to find help to control, but they can't. And that is an overriding theme. So you've got Julie. Obviously, she's not going to be able to help her own psychology and help herself when it comes to people like Chad. She's got
Right.
to she's got to actually take matters into her own hands. You
Hmm.
have Millicent and Therese. They're taking matters into their own hands. So Therese in a bad way, and then you
Hmm.
have Millicent in the good. I mean, I have to say it was a noble effort. If you know you're going to be a danger to other people, if you decide to take yourself out, where's the complaint? Where's the complaint? It's a harsh thing to say, but it's rather
Hmm.
deep. And then you've got poor Amelia, where she's got no one to depend on, and that's even
Hmm.
set up in the opening shot where she's walking with the box with the Zuni doll. There's no one around her, and she's going to that big skyscraper
Hmm.
condominium complex, which is at least 20 stories high. She's totally alone. Every time we see her, she's totally alone. And the way that the scenes were interwoven were very artistic, but they were not so artistic that they were going to turn the average viewer off. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
oh, it,
Well, one thing I
yeah,
have a problem with Amelia though
yeah.
is apparently as it's described, and she was going to broil a steak. Broiling the steak's not the problem, but she was using a knife to trim off the fat.
Yeah.
You gotta leave that damn fat on that steak. That's what's going to give it some flavor, folks.
Okay, I'm not going to talk about. I'm a lean meat man, so
You
you're going to
are.
have to punish me for that. Yeah, I'm a lean
It's
meat man.
okay. Let me guess. You probably eat it more well done.
No, I'm not. I'm
No.
not like Clobby. I'm not like
Okay.
Clobby. I prefer medium to medium well.
Okay. See, I'm
So
on the medium rare to medium side. The missus is like just slap the horns off. Like she said, so a good vet could bring it back to life. So the problem is getting anybody to cook a truly rare steak these days is very difficult. So you would think it'd be the easiest thing to do, like 15 seconds each side, but no. But anyway, so now we digressed into a little food talk. So, but we'll get back to the overview. But that's interesting that you bring those points with each of the characters with their flaw, and they're all in situations that really seem hopeless.
yes, and all of them had a very hopeless context, but you really need people who understand horror to do that. And so Curtis had a big background in horror for television,
Uh
and
huh.
also, as we mentioned, Burnt Offerings. And then you also have Nolan, who had worked with Curtis. He had a big background in horror. And then you have Matheson, who is considered one of the godfathers of horror
Hmm.
writing, both on the printed page, but also for television and film. And so it was one of those. Yeah, I mean, today in horror or science fiction or Star Wars or Marvel, etc., you have people who are chosen because they don't know anything about it and they don't like it. Whereas in this film, you had people who were brought together because they did like it, they did know it, and they were experts in the genre, and that's what made the difference.
Exactly. I mean, you really got a real horror um, show, not some kind of uh, something that passed was attributed to be horror, but not really horror. See, that's where what like Raquel and Claudia talk about sci-fi a lot. It's only recently by listening to them I'm starting to understand that there are differences because I considered everything like Star Wars. And it's a common thing that everything is sci-fi,
Yes,
um,
and I know what you're
accepted,
talking about
commonly
because
accepted. But it's not when you actually get down to look at it and look at the stories and stuff. It's not. I mean, like with reading Raquel's book, I understand a little bit better what a sci-fi is versus like reading a Star Wars novel.
well, as she puts it, there's a difference between, and I've said it also ever since 1999 when I was on screen boards, screenwriting message boards, and this is something that's been stated probably since '86. There's the science fantasy genre and the
Hmm.
hard sci-fi genre, and they're two very different types of films and
Hmm.
different types of television shows. So Buck Rogers, and I love Buck Rogers.
Yes, I did too.
Oh my God. Oh, Wilma, Wilma, my
Yes,
heart goes
everybody,
out.
every young man's favorite at that age.
But that's science fantasy, right?
Right.
Flash Gordon, and I love Max von Sydow, and he's been in a lot of good horror films and sci-fi films. Sydow, actually. Max von Sydow playing Ming the Merciless. That's science fantasy. Star Wars is technically science fantasy because Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon was what George Lucas loved, and he wanted to recreate that when he was designing Star Wars. And it is Star Wars. It is not A New Hope Episode 4. It is Star Wars. It was Star Wars when it came out in
Yep.
1977. It will always be Star Wars. I don't care what Wikitardia says. I don't care how much people rewrite things. It was Star Wars. And
And don't
that's the
don't forget
trailer we saw.
and don't forget there was no Greedo shooting first. It was just Han shot. You know.
Yes, absolutely. But then you get the hard science fiction movies, like Colossus: The Forbin Project, which I introduced Raquel to, and she said it was a 10
Hmm.
out of 10. And then there was a sci-fi horror film, but it was hard sci-fi plus horror called Seconds, and we did that also on Clobby's Clubhouse, and that's from '66, and that actually stars the guy who played Oscar, one of the stars, guy who played Oscar from $6 Million Man, and that is a hard sci-fi film plus horror. So you do need to have some distinction between the genres. Just like, I'll be honest, I do not consider slasher films to be horror films. If it's just a guy who went off his nut and he's wearing a mask and he's using a meat cleaver on a bunch
Right.
of dumb teenagers who are obnoxious on screen,
Yep.
that's not a horror film.
Well, let
That's
me
not.
say goodnight. Let me say goodnight to Castle. 5 o'clock. Oh man. I don't know how y'all get started that early, but Castle, I was up at 4:30 this morning, so I was probably going to sleep while you were getting up. But hey, good, good to see you. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us.
Nighty-O
So
Castle, thank you.
exactly. So
I haven't been rattling off too much, have
no,
I?
no, no, you're good. I just want to make sure you cover the points you have. Are there any other overall points, either on the overview or specific things in the episodes that you wanted to cover?
Well, I would also like to talk about the cinematography in this because it was
Okay, let me stop you there real quick. Okay. I have to do this with the missus. Cinematography. What does that mean? What do you mean? What am I supposed to look for when I hear cinematography?
I hope I'm scoring points with Mrs. Dadman here. I
Oh,
really
you are. You are. I'm amazed she hadn't jumped on StreamYard yet. So,
do. I'd welcome her here. I'd love to have her on right
oh, I
now.
know too. Yeah, I bet she might have another Zuni doll in the oven if she's still cooking. Oh, look at that. Just like that. So,
Thank
okay.
you. Perfect. Perfect, Mrs. Dadman. Thank you.
Yes. And I talked about pacing earlier. I didn't realize that's part of cinematography, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, and also pacing is cinematography, but it's also, and Mrs. Dadman, I'm sure will agree with this, it also comes down to the editing because when you shoot something, you might shoot 15 seconds of something and you're anticipating getting 8 seconds of something, but then you realize that shot in relation to the following scene,
Hmm.
you're going to need to go down to 7 seconds and cut it down to like half a second, like lingering when you
Yeah.
cut from Karen Black's eyes to the next shot of the room where the Zuni's coming in. So the pacing is both editing and cinematography. But when you're looking at the lighting, you're looking at specifically, there's something called a Dutch angle
Hmm.
where, and we have this a lot in Trilogy of Terror, all over the place, where the
Hmm.
camera is low. It's not middle to the shot, but you're like looking up at the characters at a slight angle, and then you're not looking up at a straight horizontal angle. You're tilting it by maybe 8 to 15 degrees that puts the audience off center. and that tells us we're supposed to be uncomfortable, that this
Okay.
scene is supposed to be uncomfortable. And I'm sure Mrs. Dadman knows exactly what I mean by the Dutch angles. And that was something that was adopted by European filmmakers, particularly in horror, but it became something that was used often, and I'd say around from 1971 onwards with American television and made for TV films, but almost all films. So if you're going to have a scary film, you want to expect a Dutch angle at some point. And this film, Trilogy of Terror, was, I'm going to use the Scrabble word, replete with Dutch angles.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm right with understanding it, that, like I mentioned earlier, with my recurring nightmares, I could feel in that visual, like that angle with the Zuni doll on the floor, getting that perspective from it, and you're kind of looking up at her. You're seeing her head up high at that angle. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
It is. So it's a mixture of a dolly shot, which is when you're moving the camera, but if when the moment you're looking up at a character and it's at a slight angle, so there's an up shot which is horizontal, no diagonal difference, and then if you slightly shift the
Hmm.
diagonal, in addition to that, that becomes a Dutch angle, a Dutch shot, and we had a lot of that in this film, in actually all of the chapters. And the other thing too is
Yeah, because
knowing
I
the
think even Millicent, they were like some of the angles were up at her face.
yes, yes, particularly when she was right at the verge of getting pissed off at Dr. Chester, right at the
Right.
verge of it. But also there with cinematography, you're choosing the exact distance of the viewer's eye to what is in the shot, what is the main focus of the shot. So we go back to that horrible moment, which is very subtle, with
Hmm.
the bed sheets being dragged down by the Zuni, you know?
Yeah.
And so the
Oh, that
cinematography,
was, yeah, you're right, because I remember her body was up at an angle like somebody that props up in a bed that can't sleep.
yes,
And you look straight down at, at not only the Zuni doll, but you were looking down at the end of the bed, the side of the bed.
which
Okay.
is exactly what her point of view would have been. So if you made it 4 inches away, it would have been the wrong shot. If you made it 4 inches closer, it would have been the wrong shot. But they chose the exact distance of the camera looking at the edge of that bed to make us feel in Karen Black's point of view. And that
Hmm.
is brilliant cinematography.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, that's nice.
It actually comes down to like a quarter inch and the focus of the cameras. And sometimes people will do funny things with the focus with the cameras, which luckily we didn't do that here. I
Hmm.
do like artsy fartsy on many occasions, I will admit that. But the beauty of this film is it was artistic, but it was not artsy fartsy. So they weren't using fisheye lens.
Right.
They weren't using Vaseline on the cameras, which was often used in the 70s. They didn't use any of those tricks. They
Why
were
would they
only
use Vaseline though?
well, Chad might have.
Oh, oh, okay. Sorry.
Sorry, I couldn't resist that.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Chad, Chad was non-stoppable.
No,
Engine that kept on going.
but the whole thing was they basically there's a term in filmmaking in acting and filmmaking which is playing it straight, and they basically played it all straight. They didn't rely on a lot of tricks. They relied on techniques, but there is a difference between a technique and a trick. So
Okay.
CGI is a trick. Having
Okay.
the camera focus properly on Luke Skywalker's face in Empire Strikes Back at that crucial moment is a technique, and there's a difference.
Yeah. Okay. Technique
So,
versus tricks. Yeah.
uh, I mean, uh, there are times where a blurry effect is used to pretend to be a technique, but it's a trick because, the special effects you got aren't great, you know? And in a lot of great old horror sci fi films, like the Roger Corman films, and I love those. He would
Hmm.
use certain tricks, but eventually he would reveal the monster and he'd play it straight. So he would back and forth between that. But in
Hmm.
this film, there was never any cheat. I don't think that there was any cheating done in Trilogy of Terror.
Right. Yeah. I tell you what, it was really effective for the time. I mean, you mentioned for those various angles, the sound effect, the pitter patter of feet, the yeah, 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 all of it. Just, I think it all really all wrapped itself up into one good solid conclusion to that. It's a shame they tried to make a sequel to it, you know,
I
and
really
then
don't recommend you watching that. I think you're going to be disappointed and pissed off.
probably this one was so good. I mean, this one lasted years with me, so it's
Decades, decades, dude, decades.
decades. Yeah, I mean, it's like I was like five at the time. I don't know. It was about I'm 52. It was probably about 51 when I learned about it. That's what it was. So about almost 5 decades.
Yeah.
That memory stayed in my subconscious. Even though I didn't have the nightmares, but I knew that image. I knew that thing. And it just sticks with you, which I think shows the power of good filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of other films where I had a snippet of a memory from age 3 or 4, and I thought, oh, I didn't really see this, did I? And then later on, I find out, no, this is a real film. And then I track down the film and I watch the film, and it's like, yeah, okay, this is what I remembered. This is what scared me,
Right.
you know? And it's wonderful that uh, you got people who were so good at what they did come together to make something like this that can be held in the memory of so many people throughout so many generations since 1975. I mean, I know we're talking about horror here, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, do you have any other elements that you want to talk about? We talked about cinematography. We talked about all of them. Anything else with the overview? I like how you made the parallels with the four women at the front of the scene, the first opening scene. Each of the characters and their shortfalls or their weaknesses. Is there anything else that you had in your notes?
Well, the only other thing I would mention is that the person who did the music did a fantastic job, and the music is meant to accentuate and augment our enjoyment and appreciation of any scene we're looking at and not overpower it. And so the guy who did the music actually had worked with Dan Curtis a lot before and worked with Dan Curtis afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like to give a special mention to the music, even though some people, like, an 18-year-old today might consider it cheesy. But then again, an 18-year-old today might think that Billie Eilish is better than Jim Morrison from the Doors or the Beatles. So I'm not going to worry about what they think.
Yeah, and like I said, especially that third one. They had the music, the sound effects, all that. I just think it was proper balance. I mean, it all complemented each other really, really well to create an atmosphere of tension. Good music can help set that mood and that tension. Also, being quiet
Yes,
or
and
softer music.
I mean, that happened a lot. I mean, if you really go back to it, especially in the Zuni chapter, there are times when we're not hearing music. We're just letting Karen Black carry the scene.
Right. Sometimes silence is better. I'll tell you prime example. I Am Legend, the Will Smith
Yes.
movie. I saw that the first time with my mother-in-law, and I thought I was going to crap my pants. My mother-in-law was grabbing my arm, my legs the whole time because of all it was pitch black in the theater, and it was just sudden jumps.
Mm.
Unfortunately, there's two things with movie theaters. They ought to do one. Kids should not be in theaters with certain movies. Period. I don't care what. I mean, I'm sorry if you can't get babysitters because it's what it is. Because but not just that, but adults. If an
Yeah.
adult cannot handle a tense movie, don't go.
Yeah.
Because I took the missus to see I Am Legend, had bragged about all this and jump scare. I knew I wasn't going to be the same because it was a repeat for me. But this lady, like a couple of seats over, laughed the whole freaking time.
Oh God.
which ruined the entire feel of the movie for her and even me. And I knew it was coming because you didn't have that tense, you didn't have that piercing silence in the
Yes.
theater. And I'm like, it was so frustrating. If you can't handle a horror movie or scary movie or whatever, don't go because it really ruined the atmosphere because you need that silence to give it that full effect.
I agree 100%. And uh, there are times where you would go to see the remake, I think it was 1990, of
Mm-hmm.
Night of the Living Dead, which luckily, was a good remake versus a bad remake, and actually starred Talia Shire, who was in Babylon 5 as well and played a little bit in some of the Star Trek stuff. And that is still, even though it's a remake, it's not something you take a kid to. So, you go to see that in the theater and someone has brought their 3-year-old. What are they thinking? What are they
Yeah.
thinking?
Yeah, there was another movie that we saw that had a kid. It's like, well, why? But
Jurassic Park. Taking a toddler to Jurassic Park in the 90s? Are
yeah.
you insane?
Well, you know what? I don't mind if there's like two people in the theater or something like that, and you're sitting way away from everybody else. But don't try to take the premium seats and have your kid nearby where they're going to cry and this, that, and the other. I mean, everybody's on the rage of cell phones. The movie theaters are big about their enemy is a cell phone and all, but it's like, what about the person that won't quit making noise over there? But it's all good.
I agree. I mean, the age of respect for the theatrical experience is long gone, and the cell phone thing really bothers me because I'm very sensitive to bright light, and so when I was watching a certain Marvel movie that won't be named because it was terrible. I was watching it, and there was a woman who had taken their 13-year-old daughter to see the film, and she was probably about 36, and she was just on her cell phone constantly throughout the film. And she would wait for a text message, and then her phone would light up. So there was this bright flash to the right of
Oh,
my peripheral vision every
yeah.
5 minutes or less.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know because the missus has that on her phone too. But yeah, you got to turn it off because yeah, it's useful if you need to help find your phone. But yeah, definitely kill it or put it in your pocket somewhere where the light won't bother you because you're sitting in that dark theater and any light's gonna get amplified there. So
And
and
here in Australia, they actually say, please turn off your cell phones when the movie begins. Nobody pays attention to that.
right, yeah, no, no, and I don't remember this, but Mrs. said she remember when they had an advertisement about taking out fussy kids. So,
Yeah, we had some of those here too. Nice one, Mrs. Deadman. Thank you. Oh,
uh,
geez.
so all right.
So,
Well, any other concluding thoughts? I mean, if we've covered everything you got, we've done the overview. We've got 5 people left with us. Make sure y'all hit that like button or subbed if you haven't yet. We're 17 away from 300. Woohoo! But hey, got the great hungry boy tonight with us. It's just a This has been a long time coming to talk about Trilogy of Terror. It's
mm.
been a pleasure. But any other thoughts on the movie? Or thoughts with the
I have one thought, which is
okay.
if anybody likes to have a PG-13 or PG Halloween night, you can take this movie and add it with a previous Curtis and Nolan horror film, the Norless tapes, and
Mhm.
then you can follow up with Horror at 37,000 Feet, which stars William Shatner of all people
Wow.
and Chuck Connors, who I love as an action guy and who has done a bit of genre stuff. And that is a lovely, non-gory Halloween night.
I agree with, especially with this. I think this definitely fits in the PG-13. So,
And if we don't want to talk about anything else, well, the one thing we can do that you mentioned is we can start venting our spleen about the village.
yeah. All right. How many? And we got 5 people watching. Any of y'all out there know The Village?
You want to go for that? I hate that movie so much.
I'm I'm tempted, or we could try to do it another time and bring it back just for that.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But I mean, the one thing I will say, if you don't mind, is
Go
I
ahead.
don't like it. And this, the beauty of Trilogy of Terror is every time something supernatural was happening, it was real and they made sure it was real. But
Yeah.
in the village, one thing I hate is, oh, something spooky's happening, and then it's just Scooby Doo, where it was Mr. Magnuson all along in a mask. It's
Oh,
screw you.
it's even worse. It's just a bunch of nothing but a crazy amount of hippies that can't stand reality in real life, and they had to go move out into the friggin' woods and stuff. That's what makes me the maddest. Damn it! I was so mad. I apologize to the wife and kids for wasting 2 hours of our life together because it was like I should have seen it coming a mile long that a bunch of hippies couldn't deal with society, so they moved. It just was like I was so friggin' aggravated. But that, in summary, is the basic thing of it. But we can definitely come together another time and pick that apart on a more. We might. I'll talk to you about that later if you're up for it another time. We can actually take our time and really pull it apart if you'd like to.
I would be happy to, because that was the village made me love the idea of despising a movie. And that's a
Yes.
hard thing to say. The village was a movie that made me lose all potential appreciation of M. Night Shyamalama Bing Bong. That was the one that ruined it for me.
Oh, I call him. I go with the camp that calls him M. Shalamalama Ding Dong. So
Yeah.
so
And I see in the chat that Mrs. Dadman is not a big fan of the village either.
nope, nope.
I mean, the thing is, if you're going to present a monster, it's got to be a monster. And this is,
Right.
and this is what ruined the film Jacob's Ladder for me,
Hmm.
where I was loving the film until the very end, and then there was this crap excuse, and I hate it when it's in Star Trek. I hate it in anything else where it's either all a dream or all an alien doing an
Hmm.
experiment. If the horror stuff wasn't real, if the monsters weren't real, the movie means nothing. If
Yep.
90% of the movie or
Yep.
the TV show was about the monsters. If you come up with, if you reach the end of your script and you don't have a good excuse for why the monsters happened, take another 6 months to figure out that excuse. Don't say it was just a death dream.
Yeah.
Don't.
Oh, I got one too. Also, in the Mouth of Madness. What did you think of that one?
Okay, you're hitting me hard here, man. You're hitting me hard because I do love that film. I think
Uh,
I know where you're coming from. I'll ask you to explain, but I do like it. I like the idea of the metaphysical loop that causes everything to happen. That it's circular. I love Sam Neill as an actor, but I'd
Absolutely.
like to hear your thoughts.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm the one that likes SpongeBob movies. I like dumb, brain dump, stupid stuff. Uh, and I usually pick crap movies. Let's go watch Last Jedi, or let's go watch this. No, but the missus, ever since even we were dating, she picked great movies because I believe this one was out in '95. We were dating and we saw this movie. I was let. I'll put it this way: was I could. There's a lot that I missed with the monsters and stuff. The little flash at it that I probably need to go watch again because
Yeah.
I. But it was a movie that I'll be honest. It's one of the few movies that I sat there at the end like, did I really watch this? And is this real? Is
Well,
this ending really real, or is this guy dreaming this?
but that's the whole point of the script.
Well, right, but that's what I'm saying is, I actually felt that, and I'm sitting there. What is real? What is not real? Which left me like really stunned. Like, oh man, this was really really good. I really liked that movie. So
Well, I will admit, and I think we're in agreement here. I hope I'm in agreement with Mrs. Dadman because I'm anticipating she and I have very similar tastes in films. Um, I that is one of my favorite John Carpenter films, and I actually enjoyed it more than Prince of Darkness that a lot of people prefer. But I thought Prince of Darkness was, for lack of a better term, a little bit, only a little bit, not slamming the movie, a little bit more juvenile than In the Mouth of Madness.
Mm,
And when we have scenes like, the kid who's riding past the car on his bike, and then later on we see the same kid and he's 90 years old, and we have all this subtlety and all these implications and all this foreshadowing. That means a lot to me as a film enjoyer, not a film critiquer, not a film reviewer, but that's the kind of stuff I really want to see in something.
mhm.
And the subtle points that they bring in, and the fact that almost, if not all of it, was done with practical effects instead of CGI.
Right.
It's just amazing. And the opening scene, well, one of the opening scenes where Sam Neill's character is having the luncheon,
Right.
and in the background, you have to watch the film twice to catch it. In the background, we see the guy who's starting to go nuts, and then he comes through the window, and then he's got the axe, and then we see his eyes. That just sets up the whole tenor, the whole flavor of the film, and I think it's wonderful. I think, honestly,
Mhm.
when I choose my, I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. When I choose my three favorite John Carpenter films, they are Halloween '78, The Fog, original version, and In the Mouth of Madness.
Mm.
How do you feel about those?
I have not seen the first two, the Fog and the other ones. I
Oh,
really have not been more much of a horror guy over the years, or
yes.
and like I said, the missus got me to go see In the Mouth of Madness.
So
So,
how would you rate on a 1 to 10? What would you rate for your movie going enjoyment in the Mouth of Madness?
well, considering I had a hot date, you know, I'd say a 10. The
Oh,
movie, the movie, I would say probably 8 to 9. I mean, it really was good, and it left me sitting there, like, what the heck did I just watch, and what is real? Which, I mean, like you said, that's what they wanted. That's what the script was for. So it did its job. I was very impressed with it. So
did you like the subtle moments when like he's waking up from a bad dream in the bus?
say that again.
Did you like the subtle moments as well as the grotesque moments? Like the grotesque moments would be when we see the monsters, or we see the
Or like
lady.
the lady and the guy chained under the counter.
Exactly. Those would be the grotesque moments,
Those are
which
the
I would.
things that stuck with me.
Right. But then there are the moments when he's having the bad dream, but he doesn't know it's a dream. He's on the bus and he wakes up on the bus and it's suddenly all blue, and he realizes, "Oh my God, I'm not getting out of this. I'm not getting out of this." You know?
No, yeah,
There's so many subtle moments in the film, but I mean that chained moment that we're talking about,
yeah.
that one really sticks in your head forever, doesn't it?
Yes, I know the tentacles or whatever the things, the arms, and like, oh my god, yes, that was horrible.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, just getting shivers about that one. So,
Yeah, that's a movie that I rewatch every couple of years. I rewatch Trilogy of Terror more, but I do really enjoy In the Mouth of Madness. And
mhm.
the thing with Carpenter that we have to understand is he's offered a certain budget and timeline for certain things depending on the movie he's working on. So
Yeah,
there are always going to be some that are going to be better than others. There's no way around it because that's the studio putting the weight on his shoulders. You know what I mean?
hmm,
So like when he's doing the thing and nobody knew the thing was going to flop because of when they chose to put the thing out. The thing is probably I would say, even though I said my previous top three for him, I would say the thing is maybe his best movie, but there's a difference between best and what you enjoy most. You know,
Right.
so you can recognize someone's technique as being fantastic and being number one, but that may not be the movie they do that you enjoy the most, that you choose to watch, like cinematic comfort food.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
go with what you like to see. Yeah.
For Star Wars, okay, I understand, I intellectually understand that Empire is considered a better movie by movie making standards than Star Wars, but I prefer Star Wars.
I agree with that. I do too. I do think Empire is because I mean you got the Empire. People like the Empire and the bad guys, but at the two movies, I mean, if I'm having a bad day or if I just want to escape, eh, I want to watch Star Wars. I want a happy ending. I want something a little different. Something fun and light. And I think it's lighter than the heavy tones that are in Empire. Empire is darker. The good
Yes.
guys don't win at the end of the day, and it's effective for what it need. It's what it needed to be. Like Revenge of the Sith, people like to poo poo on that, but it had to be what it had to be. You
Excellent
know,
point.
you know. Sometimes the movies have to be that. I will tell you the problem I had with Empire was it's the at 10 years old. It's the first time the good guys did not win.
Yeah. I
And
had a
I remembered at that age, like, really, what's going to happen now? Where's the
oh
next? I can't wait. What about and all these things? And I was upset leaving the theater. It's like this isn't supposed to happen.
yes. I saw the film with my nana when it came out, and I was she was upset that I was upset because I was pissed off for two reasons. Number one, all the reasons you just said. The good guys didn't win. Luke lost his hand. We got the big reveal about Darth Vader. We found out that Han Solo's friend was, I don't care if he was forced to do it or not, but he sold him out. He threw him under the
Yeah.
bus. And on top of that, it's a cliffhanger. I hate cliffhangers. I hate them. And I realized even at that tender age, oh my God, we had to wait 3 years for this film. Now we're going to have to wait 3 years for this to get cleared up. I was pissed off as a kid, I'm telling you. And, uh, uh, it just, as an adult, I appreciate the artistry of it, but it's
Hmm.
not a comfort film for me. Not a
No,
comfort film.
no, it's not. It's not meant to be. It's a dark movie where the bad times happen. They continue. See, I would say Jedi would be more of a comfort movie because hey, everybody wins at the end. Yeah, it's a little hokey, but it has a lighter ending.
Yes, for comfort, I go number one, Star Wars, number
Hmm.
two, Return of the Jedi,
Yep.
number three would be Empire, a low
Right.
number three. But I, with Return, it was only the injection of a certain amount of silliness, and I stress certain amount. I'm not saying it was a silly movie like other people do. A
Right.
certain amount of silliness, introduction of the Ewoks being almost the de facto Muppets, acceptable under certain circumstances. But the thing was that even as a kid, I was perceiving that some of the sets were a bit cheaper than the first two films.
Mm.
And I still loved it. I really liked it. But it, nothing achieved the majesty of Star Wars, not New Hope, Star Wars, because they did not know that it was going to be a hit when they made it, and it was made to be a self-inclusive story. It was
Right.
supposed to be one and done,
Well,
and
and that's a great point about it. Of the three movies, it's the one that you could watch all by itself and it could stand alone. Jedi needed whatever happened before because it started. Well, what happened? Why is this guy in carbonite? You know,
yes,
and all that. And Empire was like, hey, these guys are on the run. What are they running away from? The end is, so yeah, of the three, that's the only one that stood on its own. Which I think also goes towards why it's good to, it's a movie that we do tend towards for comfort, because we know that it's safe. I hate saying that word safe like that, but it's got a happy ending. You don't have to watch all three, because like you could just get bored. You watch that by itself. You watch Empire. You sort of, well, do I need to? I might need to watch Jedi again. But I will say one of the best memories I had with the missus though was to when they did the special edition releases in the late '90s.
Hmm.
We actually did the all three movies, Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, on the theater back to back to back.
Oh, great.
So, which was really cool to see them on a big screen. See, and I know there's a lot of debate. There's the thing of, well, don't give the mouse your money, or this, that, all this stuff. I still like a movie on a big screen, just because
Yeah.
we can never equate that with what we have in our house, either lighting or other things. Just there's no to me. There's always something special with that theater experience. And I tell you, our theaters barely shut down in 2020. They
Hmm.
might have been closed for a couple months, but in our state, they kept up. Now, granted, they had all kinds of crazy procedures and things like that, but I cannot tell you how beautiful that was to walk in a movie theater that, even if that was only a couple months, and smell that popcorn.
Yeah.
That was like, and you know what? It's starting to wear off now, but I know for a year, me and the missus were like, we love this. This smell, it just was like, we missed it, and
Yeah.
those are the things. That's why I tend to think, and if you got time, we can talk a little more. We got 6 people with us, so there's a few people with us out there. They might be lurking, but hey, folks, if we say something and you don't want to comment on, please feel free to comment. We love lurkers too, but hey, we'll talk away as long as Hungry Boy has time. But do you prefer watching the movie at home, or do you prefer it in a theater situation?
Well, that is an excellent question. Thank you, Dead Man. Zuni Meister, as I call you in the
Oh
chat.
yes, yes.
Because if it is a made for television movie, I prefer to see it because there were made for television stuff that was actually presented in the theater. I prefer a made for television film at home, but if it's made for cinema, if it's made for the theater, I prefer to see it at the theater because when you look at the stuff, the first three Star Wars films, they did not anticipate home theaters. They weren't even anticipating the rise of VHS nobody was conceiving of DVD technology. The films were shot and organized and designed, and all the technology was around. Seeing it with over 60 other people to 100 other people in the seats with the sound system of the theaters, that's the way the films were designed. And as many people have said over and over again, Mr. Lucas helped design a whole new sound system for the sake of Star Wars alone,
Is that
which is
that THX?
yes, which is a pun on his first sci-fi film, which he did starring Robert Duvall. That's an in joke.
Oh,
Um,
really? I didn't know that.
oh yeah, and I've seen that film. I've seen the THX film by Mr. Lucas on television when I was a kid. Now that's a hard sci-fi film. Ironically, for Mr. Lucas, not science fantasy. It's hard sci-fi. It's dystopian future science fiction, and it's really hard to take. It gets harder the older you get, particularly with the amount of control that people are trying to put on us sociologically now. Basically, it's like Lucas's nightmare about what happens if socialism really takes hold and everyone has total control over other people. So when I see I actually saw as a kid I saw THX before I saw Star Wars, and then the family we saw the trailers for Star Wars in the theater, and all of us turned to each other the moment the trailer was done and the next trailer began and said, we have to see this. And because we all said it at the same time, we all laughed. We
Mm,
have to see
yeah.
this. And we were some of the people who waited in line for over 2 hours and 20 minutes in drizzly rain outside the theater to get in to get our seats when Star Wars first came out the first week. And we were not disappointed. We were not disappointed. We were in There is bad shock and then there is good shock. Like when something is so good you can't believe it, you're in shock afterwards. And
Uh-huh.
we were in shock after the first Star Wars film. We couldn't stop talking about it for a week at
Yeah.
home. A week. And it was so different to everything that had come before. And there was so much heart and there were so many beautiful moments. I mean, there's a moment that a lot of people don't actually take into account when they talk about the first Star Wars film. It's when we're seeing that sundown on Tatooine and
Right.
there's the heat haze and oh, I'm getting goosebumps now. Oh my God, my entire body's getting goosebumps.
And don't
Just
forget the music as you're watching that, the musical
oh, the
soundtrack.
music, the music and the voice. I'm sorry for Mr. Prowse who physically played Darth Vader. I know he expected to have his voice on screen, but there's no way we could have done without James Earl Jones. There's no
Yeah.
way.
No, not a doubt. Absolutely. I mean, talk about iconic. I mean, it's transcended the prequels and now the fake ones after. So it just, I mean, I tell you, the only thing that makes them any like Rogue One. Now I like Rogue One. Rogue One is probably the only one of the mouse ones that I actually like and respect. Although they took a lot of EU stuff, twisted it,
Yeah.
and repackaged it. But as
Yeah.
a movie, not it. I could live with it. It was okay. It was kind of exciting. It was okay. I mean,
I
I know
probably
people.
like it a bit. I probably like it a bit more than you because I thought that it was bringing back the first feelings of the first film, Star Wars, not New Hope,
Right.
and it was working towards that. I'm not saying they achieved it, but I could tell they were trying to do that, and I appreciated that. I did, and it was the first time watching any modern Star Wars stuff where I felt like I was in a Star Wars universe.
I agree with that. It was really interesting. And I will tell you before I forget, one of the things you talked about your experience watching Star Wars, what was so great to me at the time was that, it was a foreign concept to people. I know like my parents and my grandparents are like, what the hell is this? And especially my grandmother was like, that's not right. And all the aliens and stuff. It was like a foreign thing to all of them. My parents that were younger were like laughing, like, oh, these are neat and stuff. And it was just such an experience to see something different and that they, you know, it made an impression. But one of the biggest things with Star Wars also, it's something I've shared a number of times, that my grandparents, the only movie I ever remember going to watch in a theater with both my parents and my grandparents, my dad's parents, is Star Wars. I
Mm.
remember that. It's the only movie I remember all of us do because my parents didn't go to movies much, and my grandparents even less. But that was a great thing to always share. The cantina had them rolling and laughing. But what I love the best, my fondest memory though, is R2D2 and C3PO.
Yeah.
My grandmother and my grandfather were them. My grandmother was kind of chatty, neurotic. Oh, Tom, stop that. And then my granddad's the hard headed little, well, I'm going to do whatever, type. They were perfect for R2D2 and C3PO looking at it. And that's a connection I've made forever. It was really a special thing that I've had with that movie. And
No, and there's the thing that I respect about Mr. Lucas. And so, some people are not going to take any bad words against Gene Roddenberry, and some people are not going to take any words bad against Mr. Lucas. But the thing about Mr. Lucas is he understood the stuff that happened in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and everything, from his childhood leading up to when he made Star Wars. And R2D2 and C3PO are like Laurel and Hardy. They're classic comedy, and well done. And I remember in the theater when there was the interplay between them. Every time they made a joke, the joke landed, everybody laughed. Adults, kids, everybody in between, they laughed. So the humor was there, and the good-hearted humor
Yeah.
was there.
Yep. Absolutely. Oh
And,
wow. I
and
loved. And Mrs. agrees with you. Hungry. Made for TV at home. Made for cinema in theaters.
right on, Mrs. Dadman, right
She's
on.
obsessed with widescreen.
That's okay.
I mean,
I
like,
get it.
I never understood what widescreen and full screen were till I met her. So it's
Well, the thing is, and this is, I know she's not going to jump on, but I have to. I said I was going to respect her, with her points of view on movies and television. The one thing that is really horrible is when you get a really good film that was done in widescreen, and then they would crop it to 4:3, and you would lose so much. So cropping, in terms of putting something on television or adapting it to VHS, that used to be a horror. And I'm really glad we're living in the digital era now. So there are bad things with the digital era where things are getting edited and censored, but there are
mhm,
good things where we can see the original versions of something. Like I'm a massive, massive Godzilla fan, have been since I was 2 years old, right?
right.
And there's a lot of things that I didn't get to see until now that were horribly cropped for four. Whoa, hello, 4:3, right?
Hmm.
And originally, it was an incredibly wide screen experience because that's what the Japanese people enjoyed making for their films. So I always want to see what somebody made with the intended screen format. I want to see it that way. I want all the visual information that they recorded with the cameras that was on the editor's desk. I want to see it all. I want to
Right.
hear it all. The only exception would be Justice League Snyder's cut, which was
Uh,
in a box. Like,
well,
why did you film it that way?
was it
Why?
as is it as bad as Man of Steel as Clobby calls that one?
Well, the way that Clobby hates Man of Steel, and I understand exactly what he's talking about. No, it's not that bad. I mean, the thing is, the Snyder cut. See, there's the visuals of the Snyder cut versus the script of the Snyder's cut. They're two different things, very different things. But with Clobby's complaints, he's really talking about the abuse of the notions of what Superman means at the core of it. So if uh, if if Snyder had respected that, it wouldn't make any difference how it was filmed. But when you look at the way DC just does not really give a crap about the way these characters thought, what their
Right.
hearts were telling them. That's the real issue. Whereas a box format versus a long screen format, if you've got it wrong in the script, it doesn't matter how you film it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I'm with Clobby on Man of Steel. I'm not going to say Man of Steel because then it sounds like I'm ripping him off.
Right. I
But
know.
the whole thing is, for me, I grew up with Superman, and I first started encountering him when people started buying me Superman material as a kid, and I love science fiction so much, and Superman at the core of it is a science fiction story. Now that means you have to pay respect to the Kryptonians, an alien race.
Right.
So if Snyder is not showing respect to the Kryptonians in the way they're presented, you're looking at the basis of the story being corrupted. And everything that follows through from that is going to be false because Kal-El, Clark, is a
Right.
Kryptonian. So if you have the Kryptonians being something, dark and dystopian in the Snyder film, then everything that follows through from that is false. It is what lawyers refer to in court cases as poisoned fruit from the tree.
Right.
And so Snyder, because he is addicted to the dark, he's addicted to the edgy, and this, I mean, admittedly, this is how his career really started off. He did a good remake of Dawn of the Dead, which was, the original George Romero film. It was good, and he got a lot of credit for that, for being really dark and edgy. And I think he thought, okay, I'll steer into this, and I will be as
Right.
dark and edgy as I always can be. And he just never realized sometimes you got to put the heart into it instead of the scary, you
Right.
know?
Yep. All right. Well,
I mean,
hey, we could go on forever. I know.
I'm sorry, did I talk on too much?
No, no, you didn't. I love this. I love this. What the? I think we'll go ahead and cut it off here, though.
Okay, it's been
For
3 hours, man. Yeah.
yeah, hey, I love 3 hour streams. Sometimes I go four. So I love long streams. So, but absolutely, I've appreciated you coming in tonight. Been looking forward to this for a long, long, long time. And maybe we'll have to go invade Mark's channel with a bunch of Zuni dolls
Well,
and make
that's
him.
okay. That's okay. But also, if you ever want to do a slaughter stream on the village, I'm down for that.
I'll take you up on that. I just got to look at the calendar, see what's coming up because July is busy. I think. Oh my god, dude! I mean, I'm like just doing the streaming stuff, and it's like I said, I'm so grateful people are willing to come on and stuff. But it's like, oh my gosh, it's like people keep saying yes, and I appreciate that. It's like I'm running out of days. I gotta still do some Fortnite, and yeah, football's coming up. It's like 72 days before college football starts, and I'm like, holy crap! Got a lot of
Well,
stuff to do, a lot of people to see. But I would tell you, I would love to slaughter the village.
yeah, I think we're gonna have to do a village slaughter stream. Well, whenever you got time, that'll be fine. But then
Absolutely.
there'll be other things to watch and talk about. Like I strongly suggest
Yep.
that it's on YouTube. That if you whenever you and Mrs. Dadman have time, check out the Norless tapes. And I will also just as we close, regarding Mr. Curtis and Mr. Nolan, who made Trilogy of Terror so fun. They also were the people that created the first two television made-for-TV horror films, Kolchak the Night Stalker. So you've got the vampire one, then you got the
Yeah.
strangler one, and then they wanted to go ahead and do a series, but the main actor, he decided to go ahead and do the series himself. That's another story for another time. But if you look up the Norless tapes, you're going to love it. And if you and Mrs. Dadman haven't seen it before, check out the first Night Stalker made for television film, 1971, and watch it
Nice.
together and
Okay.
have popcorn.
All right. Well, we will have to do Night Stalker 1971. So we'll have
Yes.
to do that. All right. Well, Hungry, thank you again. Nice to talk to you for the first time in person live. So look forward to
It's
doing
been
it
a great
again.
pleasure and an honor. You are a magnificent host, and you're a very, very good judge of character in regards to television and cinema, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, do you follow much television show? Let me go ahead and close. I've got a couple of questions for you off air
Mm.
if you have a couple minutes.
I got him.
Okay. All right. Well, folks, let me go ahead and do this. Thanks again to Hungry Boy. Thanks to everybody that's been here. Thank you, everybody hitting those likes. We got like 13 likes. Wow. Thank you, everybody that has been here doing this stuff. And the missus said this has been fun. Thank you. I hope,
Thank you.
absolutely. So this is recap. Just let everybody know what's coming. In July, we're going to do 2 nights a week. Our detour shows, we're going to break it. We got about 11 different shows planned here with breaks that we got where we're going to take a much more detailed look at pictures and video of stops along the way on our 16-day adventure up through Yellowstone and back home. Join us on Monday and Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. You'll see a lot more detail. We did a recap show, but that went 3 hours, but it was like that was just a recap. So we got a lot more stuff to show people and everything. And we put 6,009 miles on the car. So make sure you're ready
Wow.
with us in July. That will probably go into August, I'm sure. Then we've got Mondays. Next Monday night will be Sports Weekly with me, and usually have Whoopa Troopa come on with me a lot of times. So we talk sports news. We talked a lot this week. Not all stats and stuff like that. We talked business side this last week. The Jacksonville Jaguars may having to find a place to, depending what type of stadium renovation, how long they do, depends on whether they're at home or some kind of temporary site. 4 years or 2 year construction. The Oakland A's move to Las Vegas. So we don't just talk uh, sports. I mean, we get to the business side and other things that are in the news. We even did some cricket stories and stuff. Some odd little news stories around the world, and several of them dealt with Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands. I had no clue that they did badminton and other tournaments down there. I'm like holy cow. So the things we learned with it. And tomorrow night at 7 p.m. I'm on with Alaska Jeff. Another fortnight with the two of us. Gotta come check that out. It was so much fun with him last time, especially his voice. And he does great play-by-play when the unicorn gets knocked down trying to blow up gas stations. So join us tomorrow night. I'll be on YouTube at Dadman Walking 55. He'll be on Twitch at Alaska Man Jeff. So join us for that. Then on Friday night at 7 p.m., we're going to have a panel discussion about the new Fortnite season, Chapter 4, Season 3. We're going to talk to a bunch of the players that I play with and see what we like, what we don't like, things like that on Friday night. So, and then next Tuesday, I've got Mama Bear Art Doll, or you may know her as Mad's Mama Bear, coming on to talk. Well, we're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about. It'll be a chilling with Mads, and catch us next Tuesday at 8 for that. And then as we close, live streams and videos are on YouTube and Twitch at Dadman Walking 55. Streaming schedule, look on Twitter for whenever I go live, Dadman Walking 55. So all sources are the same address, Dadman Walking 55. We put some new shorts out there on the YouTube side. We're at 283 subs now. Hit the likes buttons, whatever. Bring your friends, neighbors, drunks, dogs, whatever. Let's get 17 more, because August 19th will be a year. So, I mean, I didn't think I'd be this far along, but let's see if we can get 300 before then. And, it's all up to you. It's all because of you guys that come, attend, watch the replays and stuff, and great guests like Hungry here. And thank you again, Hungry, for your time tonight.
Oh, dude, this was a pleasure and a privilege. And I'm just so glad that you and Mrs. Dadman and some other people in the chat enjoyed this magnificent movie so much.
Yes.
And understand why it is so good.
Yes. And I look forward to torturing the village with you. We will plunder and pillage the village. How about that?
Plunder. That is a perfect title. Plunder and pillage the village. Let's do it.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it, my friend. Well, anyway, everybody, y'all, thank you for being here. Y'all have a great night. And we'll see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for Fortnite. Bye, all.
Nighty-o.